Bash with Mike Gill.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, me too.
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City. A town square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
Here we go. A Sports Bash Monday is live here on 97.3 ESPN. The free mobile app and the live video is streaming on YouTube and on Twitter. I'm your host, Mike Gill. This is a Monday edition of the Sports Bash, which, it always feels so much better when the Eagles get off a victory, but it always feels that much better when it is a dominating type of victory. Now, you know, if you've listened to this show for much of the offseason, I'm not all that surprised with the Eagles winning this football game and how they won the football game. I am a little surprised at the final score of 32-6, in which the Eagles knocked off the Atlanta Falcons. All offseason long, I was pretty steadfast on saying one thing. The Eagles' offensive line is very good. Aside from the fact that they had a ton of penalties, offside penalties yesterday, really the offensive line was the story of the game. They absolutely dominated the Atlanta Falcons up front, as we thought they would all day long on Sunday. As we start things off right there, Josh Henning producing today's show. I'm Mike Gill. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Gill Show. And, of course, download the free mobile app. You can message us through the app. I want to get your reaction to the game, to the way the Eagles won the game, and does it change your expectations at all for this season? You know, I have said on the show, and a lot of people, as I've seen around town when they see me out and about, will say, you really think this team's going to be any good? And I said, I only think they could be good for one reason. If their offensive line can stay healthy. Their offensive line dominated the game yesterday. Their offensive line absolutely manhandled. What's the word Baldy used on Wednesday? Steamrolled. They absolutely steamrolled and dominated the game. There were so many positives that we can point out in the game. And here's the thing. No turnovers. If you go to our website, 973ESPN.com, you see Sal Powell's 3 keys to the game and our staff predictions. Well, Sal Powell, key number 1. Get Matt Ryan off of his spot. They did it almost all day long. After the first 2 drives of the game, the Eagles defense, people were tweeting away. I said, guys, just relax and let them play the game a little bit. Oh, the defense looks bad. Guys, relax. They got him off his spot. They hit him late in the game or early in the game. They hit him late in the game. They sacked him 3 times. The Eagles got him off the spot. That was number 1. No turnovers from Jalen Hurts. That was number 2. And don't give up the big play. They didn't give up the big play at all yesterday. Even when their defense was struggling early in the season, early in the game. Their defense was struggling early in the game. They gave up a lot of yards on the ground, but they got off the field. They got off the field. They didn't give up touchdowns. They gave up field goals. And really, the defense set the tone by not giving up the touchdowns. And then the offense, with Jalen Hurts really being productive, really being efficient, and not turning the ball. A 7-play, 75-yard opening drive, an 18-yard touchdown pass, which I hope we see a lot of. Hurts to Smith, puts him up 7-3. You know, Smith became the first Eagles wide receiver to catch a touchdown in his NFL debut since 1990. So that's how bad the Eagles draft picks. I mean, finding a guy that can actually help them in the draft. And then on the other side of things, I love the way they came out with Quez Watkins. Boom, boom, boom. And you know what that did? Like, in this game, it didn't really come to fruition. But what that sets up down the line, I love the setup. You know, it's like the slow burn. Watkins, couple bubble screen, get him in space. And what does that set up down the road? Well, look what they do with Watkins. They use him in the screen. They use him in the bubble. And then, boom, he uses his speed and goes right down the seam and beats somebody in a bigger game down the line. So I love the way they kind of set that up for future weeks with Quez Watkins. Hurts completed 4 of 4 on the opening drive for 41 yards and a touchdown. He then engineered a 12-play, 62-yard drive and ends up hitting Dallas Goedert with a 9-yard touchdown pass to close out the second quarter. They go into the halftime 15-6, 5 of 7 for 46 yards on that possession. The Eagles' offense has a ton of young weapons. It's a very interesting dynamic. It's almost like, you remember a couple of years ago with the Flyers where they had these older forwards with Voracek and Simmons and Claude Giroux, and they had the young defense. And I always would say, is the young defense going to be able to catch up to the offense? Or are those guys going to get old when the defense gets ready to play? And they never seem to mesh. The ages didn't really connect. Here, the Eagles have this older veteran offensive line, and they have these younger skill players. And Jalen Hurts seems to just have the right temperament and the right acumen to play the position on a team that has a bunch of different weapons. He spread the ball around. Devonta Smith, I think, had 6 catches. I think Watkins had 4. You go with Rieger, who I think had 6 as well. The tight ends both got involved in the game. And that is all predicated up front because the offensive line just absolutely dominated the game. Right? You can win in this league if your offensive line plays like they did yesterday. You can win games week in and week out. You'll be competitive if you can keep the ball, make plays, get the chains going, and have playmakers. This is something this team has been just absolutely devoid of the last couple of seasons. No playmaker. That was what Deshaun Jackson was supposed to be. Never came to fruition. The injuries just absolutely crushed this team the last couple of years as playmakers. But here's the thing. Kenneth Gainwell adds a dimension. Miles Sanders, obviously, who I thought Sanders had a low-key, very good game yesterday. But what they did with Gainwell, I thought was very telling. They used him in the red zone. They used him in the 2-minute drill. Gainwell is going to be a player for this team. Now, let's start with this, or at least bring this up. The Atlanta Falcons are not a very good football team. They absolutely stink. The Atlanta Falcons stink. So when I said on Friday I thought the Eagles would win the game, it's not because I think Philadelphia is some great team, but because Atlanta, I think, is that bad. I think Atlanta's pretty bad. And Philadelphia did what you're supposed to do to bad teams. They beat them up and they demoralized them. They went from Mailata all the way down to Lane Johnson and just whipped each and every guy on the front defensive line. But it was more than just that. They had guys open. They made decisive decisions. It was a totally different game than 16 games that we got stuck watching last season. And they're only going to get better with the caveat of that offensive line needs to stay healthy. Jordan Mailata just dominated the game yesterday. He got that big contract on Saturday, $64 million for a guy who's played 10 NFL games. There was a lot of people questioning, like, wait, what? Really? Jordan Mailata is worth every single penny. A left tackle for making the money that he's making, they got him for way under value. And you watched him yesterday just absolutely dominate his man. Now, is he playing an all-pro? No. But he made a guy look like he didn't belong in an NFL uniform yesterday. Mailata was the top-rated left tackle offensive lineman for the Eagles yesterday, according to Pro Football Focus. He gave up just one quarterback pressure yesterday in the game. But it was all the way across the line. The way they utilized their offense yesterday, Jason Kelce, I thought, played tremendous. Sayamala played really well, other than the fact that he went off sides like 3 times. I thought Lane Johnson, of 5, I thought Lane Johnson looked the worst of the 5. 609-403-0973 on the text board. 609-403-0973. Download the free mobile app and message us through the app. If you're watching the show live, leave a message in the comments section. Give me your thoughts now. Have you changed your anticipation for this Eagles season? Have you changed your anticipation for what you thought was going to happen this year? And keep in mind, look around the division. Ryan Fitzpatrick is already out. Dallas lost, obviously, opening night, and the Giants lost yesterday, too. So the Eagles were the only team in the division that won yesterday. David Lee's watching the show on YouTube. He says, once the defense adjusted to new coach and made changes, then dominant. Yeah, I thought everybody was overreacting to the defense early. Yeah, some poor tackling. They just looked like they were kind of a step slow or a step behind and like, hey, we need to just figure this out really quick. And I thought on the fly they did a really good job of making adjustments. Think about this. The Eagles defense limited Atlanta to 2 field goals in the entire game. In total yesterday, the Eagles defense allowed only 260 yards. They sacked Matt Ryan 3 times. They allowed a total of 102 yards in the entire second half. And after the first 2 offensive drives of the game, they only gave up 114 yards, their defense. I thought the defense really was an underrated reason why they dominated the game, but it goes back to what I've been saying all offseason long. And I know if you've listened, you've heard me talk so much about the offensive line. But the defensive line played a big factor in the game as well. The defensive line played a huge factor in the game in that they absolutely dominated the point of attack. They took everything away from the run game in the second, after really the second possession for Atlanta. They couldn't run the ball. And exactly what we talked about on Friday with Sal Powell. Getting Matt Ryan off the spot. Javon Hargrave absolutely dominated the game. I mean, he was up the middle all day long. Him and Fletcher Cox just absolutely wrecked the Atlanta Falcons game plan yesterday. Whatever their game plan may have been. And look, Arthur Smith was a very good offensive coordinator in Tennessee. He doesn't have the same weapons in Atlanta that he had in Tennessee. It's a totally different type of team. They have Derrick Henry, a big running back that they can run play action with to help get those guys open. They can't run play action with Mike Davis, Cordell Patterson. So Arthur Smith's going to have a long season in Atlanta. Dean Pease, the defensive coordinator, he's going to have a long season. They're just not very talented on the defensive side of the ball. And I think if you watch that game, okay, Jalen Hurts was tremendous. But more than Jalen Hurts being tremendous is Nick Sirianni, I thought called a masterful game. I thought he was excellent. He absolutely set him up to succeed all game long. Nick Sirianni set Jalen Hurts up for success, and Jalen Hurts took the ball and he ran with it. Great game plan by Sirianni yesterday. A breath of fresh air, it really was. You know, last year, we'd battle back and forth. We'd go over it. Well, the game plan was terrible. Wentz was terrible. No, Wentz was so bad last year, and you saw a lot of the problems that he had here. He brought those problems to Indianapolis with him yesterday. Holding on to the ball too long, taking sacks, trying to make too many things. He hasn't learned skedaddle, that guy. He hasn't learned anything. Here, Sirianni said, okay, what's your skill set? What's your strengths? I'm going to build stuff around that. And Jalen Hurts took the ball and ran with it. Text messages are coming in. I want to hear from you all day long. 609-403-0973. Text board is open. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Download the free mobile app and message us through the app. Mike, on the text board, what a super fun game to watch. A couple fourth downs I wasn't thrilled about from Nick Sirianni. Okay, I want to stop with the fourth down thing because there was one when he could have kicked a field goal, and he didn't. It was 4th and 2. It was a 38-yard field goal. They went for it. I get the whole just go get the points. They were up 2 scores. I think if they're not up by 2 scores, and the 2 scores were a 2-point conversion, 2-point conversions is what made it a 2-score game. So I think if it's a 2-score traditional 14-point game, they probably kick the field goal and just make it a 17-point lead. But because it was 2-point conversions, I think he wanted to try to really put the game away. That's why I didn't hate it. But down the road, I think he'll revisit that. Croce goes on to say, like the defense when they finally settled down, the line didn't give Ryan a chance to test the secondary. They still have a lot of areas to grow as a team, and that's a good sign so far. Yep, you're right. That's the big takeaway from me, too, is that this team has a lot of room to grow. There's a lot of room to grow with what I saw the other day. And they're going to grow together as a young core. You remember Howie Roseman can't draft. He doesn't know what he's doing, blah, 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 blah. Devonta Smith, touchdown. Kenny Gainwell, touchdown. Jalen Reagor, touchdown. Dallas Goedert, touchdown. Those guys all played pretty well. They're all homegrown draft picks. And by the way, the guy who engineered and drew them up, Jalen Hurts, played pretty well. 27 of 35, 3 touchdowns, very efficient. Didn't turn the ball over. By the way, Miles Sanders, he got drafted here too. He was pretty good. Jordan Mailata, he got drafted here too. He was pretty good. A lot of homegrown guys yesterday. Chris Hernandez is watching the show live on YouTube. Mike, I'm with you. As long as the offensive line stays healthy, we can compete. I always like how the defense is built. The bend, not break mentality. It gives the D-line a chance to dominate. Chris, I've been steadfast on that all offseason. I haven't backed away from it. This offensive line gives you a chance to compete. And if you compete each week in and week out, you have a chance to win. That doesn't mean you're going to win every time. It means you have a chance to win every time. They didn't have a chance to win with that offensive line they had last year. And you know what? Even with that offensive line, they were in 10 one-score games. And in those 11 one-score games, they were 3-7-1. They were 3-7-1 in one-score games last year with that offensive line. Watching the show on YouTube is Chile. Thanks for tuning in. Says, Mailata is going to be a Pro Bowl this year, no doubt. I'll take you one step further. I think Mailata might be an all-pro. If it's not this year, it's sometime in that 4-year window. That guy, if you just zoned in on 68 yesterday, watch 68 just crush people. Jeff's watching the show on YouTube. Mike, it all starts at the line of scrimmage. Do you think we set the tone with that Atlanta win, or is it too soon? Well, I think it's too soon, but I think it sets the tone for what you could be. It's too soon to say, oh, they're going to win the Super Bowl. They're going to the playoffs. They're winning 15 games. No. But what it is a blueprint of what they can do well. Their offensive line can win at the point of attack. You win at the point of attack in the NFL, you can win football games. 609-403-0973. A lot of text messages rolling in. Mike, Fletcher Cox's absence in the game was concerning. That's interesting that you say that. I thought Fletcher Cox, while his stats weren't great, I think Fletcher Cox's presence allowed Javon Hargrave to get loose. I thought Fletcher Cox, statistically speaking, from a defensive tackle, you're not going to get a lot. I don't think he had a tackle in the game yesterday. But his presence in the game, I think, was felt. He got double-teamed a lot, which made Javon Hargrave get single coverage or single one-on-one. And Javon Hargrave he's a Pro Bowl player in this league. He was hurt last year. We didn't really get to see what Javon Hargrave could be. All right, we're just getting started. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. This is going to be a fun day, I would imagine. A lot of your text messages, a lot of your messages. Download the free mobile app and hit us up through the Message Us button on the free mobile app. Brought to you by Clark's Moving and Storage in South Jersey for your next local or long-distance move. Clark's Moving and Storage is your first call. They're dependable and always show up online, clarksmoving.net. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app, which you can download free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle. All right, 609-403-0973. 3 up, 3 down. 3 things I liked, 3 things I didn't like from yesterday. And I see your text messages. I'm going to get to them. Plus, the particulars. Grayson's grades, 3 o'clock. Football at 4, Jeff Mosher. Casey Joyner, one thought every game, Jeff Kerr tonight. Your text messages all throughout the show. We're just getting started. Monday edition. Eagles win 32-6 right here on 97.3 ESPN. 226. If I were to tell you the Eagles would win 32-6, why would it be? Well, of course, the offensive line dominated the game. It's the only answer you could give me. And that's what I told you on Friday. Hope you listened to the Sports Bash. Sal Paolantonio also, in fact, everybody, Sal Pal, Jeff Kerr, Pete Thompson, Andrew DeCecco, and myself, all five of us picked the Eagles to win the game. So not a big surprise for this team at 97.3 ESPN. A lot of people weren't so sure what to expect, but the offensive line is the reason I like the Philadelphia Eagles. And quite frankly, the Atlanta Falcons defense, not very good. That was the message. Their line is good. The Eagles line is good. Their line is not. And that was the difference in the game. Now this week, a little different story. We'll break that all down as the week goes on. All right, let's get into a couple more of your text messages here. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Mike, whoever made the decision to take a flyer on Mailata deserves a raise. How about that? Well, that one's going to be interesting because Howie Roseman doesn't get credit for making draft picks. So now we got to give someone else credit for that, right? If it's a good draft pick, I'm sure Roseman didn't have anything to do with it. So who do you want to give credit to on that one? I mean, he was drafted in the 7th round. They took a flyer on him. The story goes that somebody saw him play and said, look, there's this guy that we need to take a chance on. And I guess not only did Roseman draft him, this is where it's interesting to me. Roseman drafted him, but he traded up to get him. Like, who else did he think was going to take this guy, right? So, I don't know. Do you want to give credit? Josh, you immediately said Stoutland is the guy who drafted him.
Because Stoutland was the guy who went down to IMG Academy to scout him for the Eagles, and he came back and told them they have to draft this guy.
Okay. Now, the general manager could tell that guy, I'm not drafting a guy who's never played football before.
Well, it gets back to the question I've asked you and others multiple times. Billy Schweim Hazley asked this question, but you're more appreciative of this question. And that is, people blame Howie Roseman for a lot of things. But shouldn't we give him credit for the fact that he doesn't listen to people? He listened to Stoutland to draft this guy. He listened to people like Joe Douglas to go out there and get a guy like, for example, Alshon Jeffrey in free agency. So Howie does listen to people.
Sure. I mean, but does that mean we get that's an interesting way to put it. He listens to people. Does that mean we don't give him credit where he deserves credit and we give him blame where you know what I'm saying? Like, so again, it goes back to, well, anything that's good, he didn't have anything to do with because someone else told him to do it.
Or do we give him credit because he actually does listen to people and he's not an egotistical maniac doing whatever he wants?
I don't know, but that's not the conversation for today. But the text message says, whoever made the decision to take a flyer on Mailata deserves a raise. He was drafted in the 7th round.
And as you mentioned, they traded up to go grab him, a guy who was on almost nobody else's boards. This is a guy who is not playing football.
At all. Well, I've compared him a lot to Joel Embiid.
Which is a great comparison.
Yeah, I've said many times, to me, he's like a unicorn. Joel Embiid had never played any basketball. Someone just saw his size, athleticism, and said, hey, you should try basketball. And the guy just got it. Mailata's the same thing to me. Here's a guy who no football, look, if you watch the video of him, they showed some highlights of him playing rugby. I said, who watched him and said, play him at offensive guard or tackle? Like you would say, why not tight end? Or why? I thought he could have been a dominating defensive tackle.
He could have been, or defensive end, as you said.
It's 6'8", 380. He'd probably play in the inside and just literally push the center right out of the way. Like, that's what I probably would have done with him. But this is a guy, to me, if he played left tackle, defensive tackle, tight end, I mean, did you see him play running? I mean, whatever they call that in rugby, what position is that? Where he just runs you over? Seriously.
Is that a position, really?
I don't know if they have positions.
I feel like all rugby is people running each other over.
Right, but he's running with the ball in his hand. It's not like he has the sense to run with the ball, too. He's an unbelievable athlete. And I think the Eagles locked him up for 4 years at severely under. The problem is going to be, you remember the Andy Reid era. The Eagles would lock up their players at below market value, and then you had problems all the time. Brian Westbrook wanted more money. Sheldon Brown wanted more money. all these guys wanted more money like 2 years into their deal because they realize, man, I signed this contract when I was a nobody. And the Eagles, Joe Banner has been known for identifying young players, locking them up early, and then 2 years later, they want more money.
Right. And don't forget that, with the salary cap going up the next 2 years, it's expected to go up because the last 2 years we dealt with the pandemic stuff. So NFL teams prorated the salary cap the last 2 years on the previous TV deal. Moving forward, the salary cap will be based on the current TV deal, which will escalate a lot of teams' salary cap room. So moving forward, teams are going to have more money to spend.
Yeah, I didn't see. I know it's like $84 million. I don't know how it's broken up, where the money's slotted, where they get hit with the big part of this thing. But obviously, they felt pretty good to give him this money now and get him locked up, because if you watched him play yesterday, you're like, this guy's going to make $100 million on the open market.
And don't overlook the fact that at the end of the day, Mailata is happy to be here. So you're not just locking up a guy at a discount rate that's going to be a number.
He was drinking beers with the fans after the game. Did you see that? Him and Kelsey drinking beers with the fans afterwards.
I mean, Kelsey wasn't surprised. Mailata was fun to see.
Well, he's been a ham. Anytime he gets a chance to talk or be on video, Mailata's a ham, man.
He's fun.
Darren in Millville text in, says, Mike, I think they look good, made good decisions, but I also agree Atlanta stinks. We'll see when they play a good team. Well, Darren, here's their schedule coming up. San Francisco, Dallas, Kansas City. There you go. 3 good teams. Then Carolina, then Tampa Bay. Every one of those teams other than Dallas won this week. San Fran won, Kansas City won, Carolina won, Tampa Bay won. So you want to see them against a good team? Listen this Sunday right here on 97.3 ESPN. More text messages, 609-403-0973. Tim from Millville. Mike, it really seemed like the defensive coordinator made an adjustment in the first half of the first couple of series. That was refreshing. Seems like Schwartz was kind of getting stale. Another nice thing was to see when they did prevent defense, they weren't all the way back the sticks. They were only 5 to 10 yards off the line. Yeah, I thought Jonathan Gannon did a really good job in the game. I thought he did a good job. I will say this. I think Jonathan Gannon has better players than Jim Schwartz does. Jonathan Gannon has Steven Nelson and Darius Slay. Well, they didn't have Steven Nelson last year. I thought Eric Wilson played a pretty good game. Jonathan Gannon had Javon Hargrave yesterday. You know who didn't play in week 1 last year because of a torn pectoral muscle? Javon Hargrave. I think Jonathan Gannon has better personnel. That said, I'm not saying, look, I was not a Schwartz hater. I thought the defense just took a brunt of the offense being and they're on the field a lot, and they just didn't have good personnel. But somehow the Eagles were constantly in the top half of the league in points allowed, or, not giving up a lot of points. People like sacks. People like they don't like this bend, don't break defense a lot, which is what they did yesterday. They just didn't give up any points. In the end, they didn't give up points. In the first couple drives, people are going crazy about how they're giving up all these yards. At the end, I said, they kicked 2 field goals. Who the hell cares? But, Tim, your point is valid. Mike, I said Hargrave was a bad signing. You and Josh said you expect a big year. He looked good. I don't know how you thought Hargrave was a bad signing. That dude is beast mode. He got hurt last year. I thought that was the big problem with Hargrave. In the last 4 games of the year last year, I thought Hargrave balled out when he got healthy.
Mike, I was arguing this back on the locker room on Saturday's show. I was trying to explain that you can't demerit a guy who got injured and say he's a bad player or a bad signing or a bad draft pick. You got to give people time to show you more than 1 year. We can't judge guys like Hargrave and Rager and others off of 1 season where they happen to miss a handful of games.
Rager had a better day than Justin Jefferson did yesterday.
Yes, he did.
Well, Justin Jefferson was on my fantasy team, and he screwed me. I actually benched Jamar Chase and played Devonta Smith.
Ooh, that hurts.
So I lost a couple of points. My receivers are loaded. Devonta Smith, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Oh, I have some guy named Lockett who had a couple of touchdowns yesterday. I have Mike Williams from the Chargers. I don't know who to play. I got 5 guys that are just, amazing.
What's worse, having Chase on your bench or me having Gronk on mine?
Probably Chase. Gronk is not supposed to have, he's supposed to be past the days of catching the ball. My running backs were ridiculous yesterday, too. I had Williams from Detroit on my bench. God, I did have Patrick Mahomes. He's fun.
He's really good.
Football's back. Fantasy's back. We are back. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. So the NFC East, we'll dive into it. Giants, not so hot. They lose at home. Washington, not so hot. They lose at home. Philadelphia's the only team in the division at 1. What's the read? Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City next. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. His appearance is brought to you by Calvi Electric, now offering residential services for your home and business online, calvielectric.com. Well, the NFC East has one team with a win. Everybody else lost on Sunday, one on Thursday. Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City. We'll get his thoughts on week one of the NFL. The Phillies might be out of it by now, as Mike joins us right now here on a Sports Bash Monday. Week one in the NFL finishes tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN Monday Night Football. Raiders and Ravens. What's going on, Mike?
Hey, how are you, Mike?
Everything's good, man. And obviously, we got the four NFC East teams out of the way. They all played. Philadelphia with a pretty impressive win. So do we take anything from that? Do we change our views of this team at all? Or is it, they beat the Falcons?
I think you got to be impressed with the Eagles. I think, tell you what, overreaction Monday, right? But I don't think there's anything wrong with overreacting. As I say to my good friend Jack McCaffrey, who's a columnist up with the Delaware County Times, I'll judge you on what you do today. And if you're even better tomorrow, that's great. And if you're worse, if you played bad, next week we'll judge you then. But the Eagles checked all the boxes right on Sunday. The only caveat I would say is I think the Atlanta Falcons are a really bad football team. But what do good football teams do to really bad football teams? They beat them 32-6, and that's what the Eagles did.
And they went on the road to do it. Another, fact that gets missed here. I guess, for me, Mike, many people say, man, you're way too high on the Eagles. I said, I'm not too high on them. But I will say, if the offensive line can stay healthy, they have a shot to win each week with that offensive line. I thought the line dominated yesterday.
Yeah, and obviously I thought the Falcons hurt themselves with some, the inability to score those first two possessions. That was probably the game, right? They moved the ball down the field on the Eagles, and they got to settle for field goals instead of touchdowns right there. And that was a big turning point in the game. Yeah, I'm impressed with the Eagles. Jalen Hurts, check. Devonta Smith, touchdown, check. Jalen Reagor, touchdown, check. Nick Sirianni coached a good game, check. The defense made adjustments, check. You really can't criticize anything the Eagles did. And the people that picked them to win 10, 11 games, they look good now. And the people like me who picked them to win 5 games, we got to be quiet for a week.
Mike, obviously, Howie Roseman gets a lot of heat for the drafts, but a lot of draft picks, a lot of homegrown guys helped out yesterday. Smith, Gainwell, Reagor, Mailata. They had a pretty good day with some of their draft pick. Hurts, by the way, he looked pretty good. So some homegrown guys helping out for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what they have to be maybe most encouraged by is that Jalen Reagor touchdown, right? Because that's a big question mark you had coming in. You were worried that you maybe wasted that, last year's number 1 pick, and he had a good game yesterday. Like you said, I hear an awful lot of people knocking Howie Roseman, but, just about every player he acquired in the past 2 seasons, performed well yesterday. So we'll see what happens going forward. But hey, the NFL is one game's big. What would you rather be right now? 1-0 hosting the 49ers, or be like the Giants and Washington? They're both 0-1, and they got a game Thursday night where the loser of that game, 2 weeks into the season, their season might be over.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. So let's transition into what happened with the Giants yesterday, because they had a home game and they were a home dog in the game. And obviously the whole Saquon Barkley, was he going to play? That was kind of hovering over. But everybody, Daniel Jones, and they just looked lifeless in their game yesterday. I had a lot of that game on because it was the standalone 4 o'clock game, flipping back and forth while Cleveland was beating up on Kansas City. And then, of course, Kansas City came back. So I saw a lot of Giants just look like a lifeless bunch out there.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think Giant fans are just tired of it. I'm tired of Daniel Jones. I'm tired of the same nonsense. I think the Giants defense played well. They cracked late, but they can only do so much. They did a good job. They got some turnovers, but could the Giants score more than, basically 7 points while the game's going on? This is Daniel Jones' 3rd year. It's the 3rd year that we're seeing this. And a lot of text I got from Giants fans were like, I'm done with this. I'm tired of watching it. The skill position guys are allegedly there, but they don't make plays. And the offensive line didn't really protect them. So I think I think the Giants' defense is pretty good. I think they've got players, but there's only so much they can do. You got to score more than a touchdown in a game. And the first series killed them, right? They make the long pass, they get down to the 30-yard line, and then they go backwards from there. And it seemed like they never recovered from that. And now Thursday night, they're going to Washington. And if they start 0-2, football season over for the Giants.
Well, it's like you mentioned the defense, which I agree. I think their defense is better, but they gave up, 100 yards. No, one of them was a 70-yard run to Gordon. Other than that, but they give up 100 yards to Gordon. But Bridgewater, I thought, beat him up pretty good. I mean, he was 28 of 36. I thought he found guys all day.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job of kind of bending, not breaking. The game was 20-7 late in the second half. But I just think it's the NFL, right? And when you're on the field that long, sooner or later, the offense is going to score some points. You saw it in the Eagles game, right? The Falcons had controlled possession early, but in that second half, the Eagles seemed to have the ball all the time, and the Falcons' defense eventually fall apart. It's the NFL. Eventually, the defenses are going to fall apart as the game wears on.
Well, over to Washington, who also lost at home. So tough way for them, the defending NFC East champions. They lose Fitzpatrick. He's already been placed on the injured list, so Tyler Henneke is going to start that game on Thursday. But Washington, who gets a home game out of the gates and loses, all of a sudden you got to feel a lot differently about that team if you were someone who liked Washington. I like because their defense really good. And I thought their defense played pretty well, but surprisingly, they gave up some key third down plays, and they gave up 100 yards to Allen. So that team all of a sudden, to me, seems like it's in a little bit of a different spot than I thought 2 weeks ago.
Well, I agree. I thought the defense, played solid. I think San Diego's pretty good, right? I think the Chargers are a pretty good football team. They got a good quarterback. They go in there, score some points. But you're right. One of the reasons I felt good about Washington was I thought the upgrade in quarterback spot. I thought Fitzpatrick is what he is, but he's better than Alex Smith and Haskins. Now you don't have Fitzpatrick. So who knows where you're going? And they're in a, that's a desperate game Thursday night, because if Washington were to start the season with back-to-back home losses, I mean, where are you going from there? So that is, Thursday night football might as well be desperation football in week 2, because the loser of that game is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, you're right, Mike. It's because, and then Dallas, of course, that we talked about them from Thursday. They play Philadelphia, not this week, but the following week. So that one will be interesting, because one of those teams will be 0-2. And then, of course, Dallas and Philly will get in, because there's not a lot of – it feels like Philly's division games are all kind of backed late in the year.
Yeah, loaded back into the season.
Yeah, Dallas plays the Chargers this week.
Yeah, I still feel good about Dallas. I thought they were impressive, and I think with Dak Prescott back, before he got hurt last year, their offense was really playing well. And you can, argue that they are a controversial pass interference call that wasn't called, basically, away from beating Tampa Bay. So, I still feel good about the Cowboys, but they've got a big game coming up this week. And then, of course, the Eagles on Monday night, 2 weeks from today. So it's amazing how quickly, again,
it moves, man.
Yeah, it's Overreaction Monday, but I don't think there's anything wrong with overreacting, because one football game is a big, big deal.
No, you're right. So give me the biggest overreaction from the Eagles win.
Biggest,
you hear it all, man. You get it from both sides.
Yeah, maybe Sirianni going to Canton would be the the overreaction there. Let's settle on that, and maybe Hurts a little bit too. Because here's what I think. I think Sirianni now looks like a genius, because in the preseason he didn't show anything. So they come out in those RPOs, and they really had the Falcons kind of on their heels, basically. Now, the 49ers are going to get, a video of it. They're going to get a better idea of what, exactly the Eagles are doing. They're going to be able to game plan, I think, more effectively to stop it. So let's just pump the brakes on Sirianni a little bit and see where it goes from here.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point, because Sirianni, I really felt had a great game plan. I mean, it was good to see. I always say accentuate the positives. I loved what he did with Watkins early. Boom, boom, boom. And then you had to account for Watkins like all day the rest of the day.
Right.
And that opened things up for other guys. Like it was like watching a slow burn in a wrestling story. Like, we start out with this guy. Oh, and when are they going to go back? They never went back to him. But you had to account that he was going to be there. And then the rest of the day, I thought that he had a really good pulse of on play calling yesterday. Something the other coach did not do very well last year.
Right. I thought they did a great job. I thought the only questionable decision was when he passed up the field goal right and went on fourth down. That was it. But, we'll see this week what he's like because, I kind of get the feeling like, a rock and roll band sometimes puts out a great first album because they got a lifetime of songs and they put those 10 songs on the album and they're all spectacular. And then they got to write 10 new songs for the second album and things don't go so well. So did Sirianni spend a lifetime or an off season preparing for this opener? Let's see what he's got in week 2. But again, guys like me, I said 5-12. I got to be quiet this week because the Eagles look good.
All right. So the Eagles are ahead in the NFC East. They're the only team in the division at 1, and that's notable because all 4 of these teams have major flaws, and they don't play each other, at least Philly, until late in the year. They have a lot of division games later on in the season. Now, Philly plays Dallas not this week, but next week on Monday night. Their next division game after that isn't until November the 28th. They play Dallas, and then not again until November 28th will they play a division game for Philadelphia. So this division is going to be very interesting. Mike, over the weekend, the Phillies, 3 out of 4, they lose to the Rockies. Joe Girardi said, stunk, unacceptable, but 4.5 out. Is it to the point where they are now done?
I believe so. I just think they just can't overcome what is – a lack of talent and subpar years by the guys that are out there. Again, you look at that infield. Bohm is in the minor leagues. Gregorius has had a bad season. JT Realmuto has had a bad season. Andrew McCutcheon's been inconsistent. Andrew Nola's had a bad season. The bullpen's had its ups and downs. I kind of just posted a story on our website a little bit ago, pressofac.com. I think Joe Girardi has lost his sense of humor with the Phillies. And I think, if they don't make the playoffs, which I don't think they're going to do, there's going to be some questions in the offseason. Girardi is entering into the final year of that contract. There is a club option for 2023, but do the Phillies pick up that option? Do they let Girardi manage as a lame duck guy next year? I mean, it's going to be an interesting offseason if the Phillies, as we expect, do not make the postseason. And 4.5 back, 2.5 back in a wild card, I don't see it.
Yep. Mike McGarry, biggest story in high school football this weekend was?
Millville, 49-38 over Shawnee. LeQuint Allen with 6 touchdowns in the game, 300 yards rushing. Millville goes over to Medford, wins the game. They're 3-0. They make a statement. So a great job by the Thunderbolts kind of establishing themselves as, one of the top teams in the state with a big road win.
All right. Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City. Check out, of course, pressofac.com for all of Mike's Phillies, Eagles, high school, and everything else happening. He does it all. His column, Must Win, appears on Friday, and he'll be back here on Wednesday as we'll take a look at what's going on. Eagles and 49ers should be a good one, and we'll have that coverage all week long. All right, Mike, take care, pal.
All right, see you down the road, Mike. Thanks.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City always does a good job covering all of the teams. He's kind of their do-it-all guy, and we appreciate him jumping on 3 times a week right here on the Sports Bash. Enoch is listening, or watching, I should say, on YouTube. What's up, Enoch? There was a guy that pitched at West Virginia, got drafted in the first round. His name was Chris Enochs. I wonder if you're that guy. Doubtful. Sports Bash, after a big Birds win, is second to none. Thank you, sir. I've been waiting for this. Cheers. Well, cheers to you, my friend, and I appreciate the kind words. Sports Bash, live, text messages rolling in. Message us through the free mobile app. Download the app right now and hit the Message Us button. When we come back, it's the first edition, 2021. Grayson's grades are in. Who passed? Anybody fail? Did anybody fail? Last year was all Fs and Ds. This year, do we have any Ds and Fs? Find out next, or go to our website right now, 973ESPN.com. Plus, coming up, I got my 3 up and 3 down from the Eagles win against Atlanta. Check out this week's photo gallery of the Eagles win against the Falcons right now at 973ESPN.com.
that. So you got to be blocking your tails off.
All right, hour 2 of the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Time for Grayson's Grades. They are brought to you by Boardwalk Honda. From Maine to Miami, nobody beats a Boardwalk deal online at boardwalkhonda.com. Well, we did Grayson's Grades every week last year, and unfortunately, there was a lot of D's and F's. Well, the grades seem to be a lot better this week with week number 1. How long can this sustained student keep these grades up? Well, let's bring him in. Professor Scott Grayson is with us for another edition, another season of Grayson's Grades, and you can read all the grades right now at 973ESPN.com. Scott Grayson, what's up, man?
Mike, good to see you again. Obviously, football season is alive and well.
It is, and man, I don't know what your expectations were for this season. A lot of people did not have high expectations. I, for one, said if the Eagles' offensive line can stay healthy, I think they can be competitive. And what's competitive? You can win 10 games with a healthy offensive line. That line yesterday, to me, was the difference in everything. It allowed the playmakers to do what they had to do. It allowed Hurts time. It allowed the running game to run. But that line has to stay healthy. So let's start with what you saw from the offensive line in yesterday's game.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback a little bit on what you were saying before, you and I seem to be kind of on the same page. I saw the over-under at the beginning of the season for Eagles wins at 6.5, and I thought, to me, that seems like a no-brainer to go over, especially when you're talking 17 games, the easy schedule, especially in the second half of the year. To me, I'm with you. I think this team has a chance to win 9 or 10 games. I felt that way before yesterday. I still feel that way. You're right. The offensive line is such a huge key. I've been yelling and screaming that Jordan Mailata needs to have gotten time before now. I'm so glad to see they finally settled on that. The guy looked good yesterday, and he clearly has a lot of room to grow because he's still learning. How crazy is that? The guy's still learning. And you look down the line, and how many times did we see Jason Peters tap out? And you start trickling down with the dominoes that fall from Jason Peters coming out in games last year and the years before. Guys don't trust the guy next to him. They try to make a block that maybe they otherwise might not have had to. And other injuries creep up. Was the offensive line perfect yesterday? No. Were they pretty good? Yeah. And if they play that way, you're right. They definitely will control the line of scrimmage. And I think, quite frankly, allow this offense to do what it's supposed to do. Allow Jalen Hurts to keep his eyes down the field, not have to worry too much about getting out of trouble. And clearly, they were good. And this week, obviously, is going to be a different challenge for those guys, including Mailata with the guy named Nick Bosa. But that's next week's problem. For now, the grades are good. The offensive line got an A. Liked what I saw out of them for sure.
All right, let's look at some other individual efforts who got A's for you. And Jalen Hurts. I mean, last week, every week, it was Carson Wentz in the D category for the most part. We just saw a totally different game from that position in week 1.
You're absolutely right. Biggest thing that I'm looking for to get to the 9-10 wins we were talking about with Jalen Hurts, just don't turn it over. If he doesn't turn it over, this team's got a chance to win every single game they play. Last year, they had short fields to deal with so many times, whether it was a turnover or the 4 and outs or the 3 and outs or the fourth down turnover on downs the Eagles would have occasionally. Jalen Hurts, to me, the biggest thing, no turnovers. I liked his decision-making. I stayed down the field. He looked to throw first, didn't look to run. It was a Russell Wilson-esque kind of performance. When it was time to run, he ran, and he made positive plays. And I heard Nick Sirianni talking just now a little bit ago about the biggest thing he noticed on film was that Jalen had the instincts to sense when guys were coming. It wasn't that he had to look at them. And he said when a guy can do that, that's when you know they're really playing the position well. So if Hurts is doing that in game 1, I think we're in good shape. Now, it's one game, and one game does not make or break a season. It also does not write a narrative for a player, in my opinion. It was a great place to start for this season. I like the way Hurts handled himself. I like the way he's leading this team so far behind the scenes. And let's see if there's more of that next week.
All right. By the way, you gave the offensive line a B, and I guess that was in part because of the penalties.
The penalties, you're right. That's right. The penalties really bugged me. Lane Johnson, 3 of them. The pre-snap penalties can't happen. But credit to the offense and the fact that last year that derailed drives in a hurry. They were able to overcome that. Now, you don't want to get yourself in that position repeatedly. That was the big knock that I had on the offensive line. You're right.
And by the way, an A for Jalen Hurts. Another guy who got an A was Devonta Smith. Now, Nick Sirianni just got done talking. He also went out to mention how well he blocked. He thought that was another thing. But I want to, he gets an A. He scores a touchdown. But route running, confidence. He said right off the bat, as soon as I saw man coverage, I knew this was a touchdown. You have a guy who has confidence and has the skill set to back it.
Absolutely, and he doesn't have the ego that's all about him. I like the way he's an unselfish player. He's obviously out there just trying to make the plays he can when the opportunities exist. The touchdown was great, and he got himself open. And having watched Devonta Smith run routes, it's fun if you like watching routes and seeing a guy get himself open. This guy has that capability. On that touchdown, Zach Ertz deserves a lot of credit for not drawing an offensive pass interference penalty and giving Devonta Smith the opportunity to create a window. The impressive thing to me was on the one drive a little bit later when Smith caught 4 passes in a row. That showed me the chemistry between Hurts and Smith is at a great place. And I don't know what the Falcons were doing not covering him, because clearly he was a popular target at that point in time. So, yeah, Smith's not going to be a guy that complains. He's going to be a guy who's going to take the opportunities that come his way when they can. I just love seeing younger players. This roster, for a while, we all were saying they had to get younger. These skill players are younger, and they produced in week 1. It was really fun to watch.
It was, and let's go to the other receivers on this team, because Reagor, who was basically thought of to be a bust after the first season, the way that Sirianni kind of used him, he didn't get catches early, but later on in the game, he became a factor.
Yeah, and that screen pass for the touchdown, he did a great job of really reading the blocks that were in front of him. Obviously, Jordan Mailata laid the dude out, and Jason Kelsey had a great block on that play as well. But some of those screen passes, if you remember in the past with Doug Peterson, some of those players, including Reagor, were in such a hurry to get going downfield that they didn't stop and read the blocks. And I think the biggest thing, if you're looking for growth from Reagor, what I saw yesterday on that one play was a guy who had patience and waited and saw where the blocks were, read it, and then went. In the past, he would try to go so fast that he'd run right into a tackle. So that was a great thing to see there. And I'm looking for more out of Reagor. I think he will definitely have a better year than he did last year. It's hard not to. But you're looking for that sophomore growth. I want to see that out of Reagor, and I liked what I saw in that game.
These are Grayson's grades. You can get the full list of grades over at 973ESPN.com. We're just kind of going around to some things that stood out for the grades. And I do want to talk about Nick Sirianni, the head coach, and the game plan that he had. I mean, last year we would constantly be having Doug Peterson in that DF category, a team that just didn't have great game plan, not very creative. Now, I don't think he had a lot of help. I mean, the offensive line last year was a mess. I thought Wentz was terrible, which kind of poured it on Peterson. But I think Sirianni did a great job of accentuating the positives of what he has.
He really did. And I didn't, quite frankly, that's probably the biggest surprise I had was how well he managed the game, how well he had a flow on offense. And he had this team moving pretty much every time. There were times that drives would stall out, but at least they'd move the ball first a little bit. And what impressed me about Sirianni was the fact that the flow was there. He had this team pulling in the same direction. They really felt like they were on the same page as you watched them play. And quite frankly, the adjustments in game that you saw. Last year, I think Doug and, when you talk about the other side of the ball with Schwartz, they were so stubborn with, this is my game plan. I will succeed with it until I'm done banging my head against the wall and there's nothing left, or it works. And it didn't work. I thought with Sirianni, there were adjustments made. There were good things that they did that set up plays later on. He impressed me with his ability there. And the question again is, okay, now there's stuff on film for the Niners from Sirianni in this offense and this playbook. What kind of things did he save to kind of roll out now next week? That's going to show me something next week against the Niners, is what kind of things you wrinkle off of that you ran this week.
Jonathan Gannon, you also gave an A. Now, early in the game, it looked like he might have been in a lower category. Yeah. What did he do, though, that really impressed you that you gave him an A for? Because obviously, giving up 6 points, they gave up like under 300 total yards. How did they do it?
I was really disappointed early on because, like you said about the offensive line, I really expected this defensive line to dominate as well. You had an inexperienced starter at center. You had a rookie starting at left guard, I believe. I expected the Eagles to just take full advantage of that inexperience and win that battle up front. They didn't on those first two drives. The defensive line looked awful, quite frankly. But when they had to, they did buckle down. They kept the Falcons out of the end zone. And again, the big key word here, adjustments. It's the word of the day. Gannon made some nice adjustments with how to restructure what they were going to do and how to conquer the Falcons offensive line and get back there. I mean, eventually, that Brandon Graham tackle for a loss on that running back was huge. That was a big play that started to get some confidence going for these guys. And then once this team, and the character, perhaps the narrative you see with this defense, once this offense got the lead, this defense pinned its ears back and just abused the Falcons, abused Matt Ryan. They got back there, got those 3 sacks in the fourth quarter, and quite frankly stomped on their throats and took away any desire to play the game. That is a key characteristic that you may remember from the Super Bowl team that the Eagles had, was when they got the lead, they'd step on teams, and they just became one-dimensional, and they'd conquer them. And I'm not saying that that's what this team is. I'm saying in week one here, that's what I saw. That's what I saw Gannon's mentality trickle down to these guys. And just like with the offense, the defense really seemed to be on the same page. You didn't see guys yelling at each other. You didn't see guys panicking at all. On either side of the ball, right off the get-go, they were composed. And it really looked to me like this team felt like it was going to win that game from the beginning.
I want to flip over to that defense, to some of the individual players. We just talked about Jonathan Gannon. Also, Fletcher Cox doesn't have a stat, but him and Hargrave, I thought you talked about the inexperience in the interior of their line. They took advantage of that really after the first 2 series of the game. I thought Fletcher Cox was getting doubled a lot, and Hargrave was just absolutely destructive. The 2 guys in the interior. Now, Fletcher didn't get a grade, but Hargrave ends up with the 2 sacks. He had a tackle behind the line of scrimmage, but the duo was a handful.
Yeah, and Hargrave does. You're absolutely right. And Hargrave doesn't do that unless Cox is taking up 2 large men at the time, and he always does. I mean, it's hard for me to grade Cox a lot because he doesn't show up in the stat categories, but he does all the little things that if he wasn't there, the other guys around him wouldn't have the success they do. Clearly, that was the case with Hargrave. He was a beast because he was in a one-on-one battle, and he was able to take full advantage of it there late in the game. And Matt Ryan just didn't have time to do anything when they became a one-dimensional team, as I was talking about before. But I like that duo, Hargrave and Cox. And quite frankly, so many times I've even thrown the injury tent into the grades in the past. The biggest thing to me is this team came out of this essentially totally healthy after week one. We haven't been able to say that a whole lot in the past. And you look at that defensive line, the depth that they have, it's all still intact. You talk about the offensive line, the depth that they have. Really, you need those starters to stay healthy. The depth may be a bit of a question, but they're all healthy. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing for this offense and defense. If those lines can stay healthy, then they can have some success.
Yeah, you're right. The depth is going to be the question because their starting level offensive and defensive line, excellent. But if somebody gets hurt or multiple guys get hurt, the depth on this team certainly will be challenged, especially, Scott, if it gets into that secondary. Because I thought Slay and Nelson did a really good job yesterday.
Yeah, and you know what I really like, too, is as we were talking about Gannon earlier, is he really mixed up man and zone coverage. And they were on the broadcast talking a little bit about that with Slay. Once they got into, again, that one-dimensional offense, Slay did a great job of just picking the first down marker, planting his foot, and breaking on the ball. If there's anything to be disappointed about with those guys, I think at times there were some interceptions that could have been had. And obviously they're playing defense because they don't catch the ball as well, or else they'd be a receiver. But a lot of positives there. I like, for a long time we've been waiting. What are they going to do on the other side of corner? What are they going to do on the other side of corner all offseason? And it was finally late that they added Nelson. That was a huge pickup. I think it helps Slay's confidence. It helps that secondary's confidence as a whole. But you're right. Behind them, those guys have to stay healthy because it's a game changer if they're not. It
sure is. And obviously, I want to get your take. I don't know that anybody made the grades in terms of linebacker. I don't see one in there. Is that a concern, though, down the road? Because early in the game, they were getting beat up on the ground. Is that more because they're linebackers? Is that more because you said, the defensive line looked terrible early? What about Alex Singleton and Eric Wilson, the 2 linebackers?
Yeah, they really kind of seemed to settle down a little bit as well. And that's at the time I was disappointed in the defensive line, but then after the first possession, I kind of was asking myself, in the commercial break, while the Eagles were waiting to get the ball, was it the defensive line or was it linebackers not filling the holes as well? And I think it was probably more of that. And it's amazing how much as the game went on, they started to play better as a unit as well, the linebackers. No, I didn't give them a grade. I'd probably give them a B on the overall. Early on, I think it was probably more them not filling the gaps at the defensive line. They were taking care of their guys, and the linebackers were supposed to come up and fill those holes. I'd be curious to hear that kind of perspective from Gannon, if in fact that was the case. But there's definitely room to grow with that unit for sure. They obviously don't have a whole lot of experience playing together with each other. Singleton, we're expecting to be a bigger factor. He had a great year last year for sure. I want to see Edwards step up more. I want to see Sean Bradley grow at that position as well. They do have depth there if those guys can live up to a little bit of their potential. But look, there's no doubt when Howie Roseman goes down the positions and says, where am I going to spend money? We all know that's the last position he looks at. And you just hope that those guys that they do put in there can grow and fill in the position well. I think there's definite growth that needs to be had there. But as a unit, you saw that during the game. Now the question is, will they start off against the Niners at the same spot?
All right. Last kind of observation I want to get from you. I don't know if Zach Ertz, the hamstring thing, played a factor here, but I thought it was going to be an interesting storyline on what they did with Goddard, Ertz, and how they split those and who got more targets. What did you think of the way Sirianni utilized his two tight ends?
I think the hamstring did play a little bit of a factor late in the game as to why Ertz maybe didn't get a little bit more action, but I like the way that they were both being used, particularly early on. At times, he even went out to a 3 tight end set. And so what you saw, though, was, again, on the touchdown to Devonta Smith, it's overlooked, but Ertz provided essentially a pick without drawing a flag. That's a veteran play. You don't get that out of a younger player usually. Another veteran play, that long throw. If Hurts could have hit Ertz in stride on that throw down the sideline, that could have gone a long way. We actually would have had some Zach with some yak after that. But, yeah, it wasn't even a catch. They showed that. But Ertz with that veteran mentality again, quick get to the line. He was telling everybody, we got to snap this quick. And they really did. They avoided the opportunity for a review. You saw the value that Ertz has here as the veteran that he is. And I think, look, however they got through that tumultuous time, it was rocky there. I mean, obviously the Eagles and Ertz were not happy with each other. There was talk of trying to move on. The fact that they found some ground to be able to stick on and move forward, look, it helps this offense a huge deal. It helps this team. It helps the locker room. And you saw Ertz, the veteran, make veteran plays yesterday. And I look forward to seeing how he and Goddard can work together more down the road.
Full list of grades over at 973ESPN.com. Check out Grayson's grades after each and every Eagles game right here on the Sports Bash. And, of course, he's back for another season. You can see Scott on Fox 29 as well. And follow him on Twitter at SGraysonFox29 for everything that's happening with the Eagles this season. All right, Scott, good to see you, buddy.
All right, you too, Mike. Have a good one.
All right, there's Scott Grayson and his appearance today for today's Grayson's Grades on the Sports Bash. They're brought to you by Boardwalk Honda from Maine to Miami. Nobody beats the Boardwalk deal online, boardwalkhonda.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. And don't forget, you can download the free mobile app. Get the app free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle. You can message us through the show. We got text messages, video streaming, plenty of ways for you to get in touch with the Sports Bash. When we come back, I will read off your text messages. Here's the way to hit me, 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Message us through the free mobile app. Or if you're watching the show live right now, and I see a lot of you are watching, boom, there's a big counter up there that tells me how many people are watching. We got a lot of people watching the show today. So if you're watching the show, what do you know? Is your opinion different about this Eagles team now after what you saw on Sunday? Plus, coming up, 3 up, 3 down. I'll give you 3 who surprised me and 3 who disappointed me. That's still to come today on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Sports Bash brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan now open Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online, mattblattnissan.com. I'm Mike Gill, at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. Follow me there. Follow the show at 973 ESPN. Download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle. You can message us through the show, and you're going to want to do that because this is the time we're going to start reading off some of your text messages and answering them right now here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. So let's take a look at what you guys have to say about an Eagles win here on the Sports Bash. Hey, Mike. This is Tom from Margate. Says, hey, Mike, I agree with you. If the Eagles' O and D lines can stay healthy, I think they can win 10 games. What'd you think? I've been saying that all along, Tom. I've been saying that all along. People think, oh, you're this, you're that, you're no. I mean, if I think the Eagles stink, I think they stink. There's no problem saying the team stinks when they stink. I didn't think this roster, offensive line, the NFL is about winning in the trenches. Their offensive line is very good. Their defensive line is very good. The issue I have with both of them is age. And if they're old and they get broken down, this team's going to have some troubles. They've got good – look, there's a lot of teams in this league that have good skill position players. The Minnesota Vikings have good skill position players. They can't win consistently because their line stinks. The Giants have good skill position players. They can't win because their line stinks. The Eagles have good line. We don't know much about their skill position players because they're very young. But there's a big difference in this league, okay? When you have a good offensive line, you have a chance to compete every week. And the big thing with this team is people talk about, oh, this is the worst roster in the league. Their offensive line's top 5. Their defensive line's top 5. And just because you haven't played doesn't mean you can't play. They went out and got Steven Nelson. Their secondary's better. This is a better defense. And they've got they had 14 different line combinations last year. If you were looking at this team based on what they did last year, you just don't get it. Mike, is Epps okay? I think he had a concussion. I don't know what Sirianni didn't speak. Normally the Eagles coach speaks at like noon. He didn't speak today till 2:45, so I was on the air. So I don't know what Sirianni gave update-wise on injuries. I don't think there was very many injury issues with this team. They got out of week 1 pretty healthy. All right, what else we got? 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. I have to take into consideration, Mike, that it was against the Atlanta Falcons, and it was only game 1. However, I really loved it. It was almost too good to be true. That's from Jay Jones. Well, yeah, you do have to take under consideration it was against the Atlanta Falcons. I think the Falcons are going to be one of the worst teams in football. They're bad. They're bad on the offensive line, and they're bad on the defensive line. But I bet you take Calvin Ridley. Matt Ryan's been an MVP in this league. I bet you take Ridley, Kyle Pitts, and Matt Ryan, most teams, but you can't win if your line stinks. It's a great example of why offensive line matters. The Falcons are a great example. Heck, they had Ridley and Julio Jones for years and couldn't win skedaddle. Rob in Margate. Mike, I love the show. Well, thank you, Rob. That's very kind of you to say. Not everybody shares the same opinion as you. Says, I think Jalen Hurts has tremendous upside. One aspect of the team I'm concerned about is the linebacker core. I worry about the linebackers holding up in coverage against teams that run a lot of play action. Rob, valid. I asked Scott Grayson about it. I thought the linebackers were okay yesterday. Singleton's a grinder, but he's just, he's not great at anything. He just works really hard. So I think the linebackers, look, last year, Geary was atrocious. I think the linebackers are better than last year, but that doesn't mean that they're a strength of this team by any stretch of the imagination. You're right. The Falcons don't have a big, serious running threat, but the teams coming up, we'll see. San Francisco, Mostert, I believe, got hurt yesterday. And I think the third-round pick was inactive yesterday. So we didn't see a whole heck of a lot of what they bring running the football. The play action against the Cowboys will be interesting. Their linebackers are going to have to be better. Rob Margate, thank you for the text. Chris says, hey, Mike, going over the young drafted talent, don't forget Milton Williams had some success too. Very happy with this coaching staff. That's Chris texting the show. Yeah, look, I'm not a Howie hater. I think they have talent on this team. I think the coaching staff, the previous regime, if one thing, I was not a Doug hater. I thought Doug was a motivator of men. I don't think he was great at getting the most out of his talent. I think he was good with a veteran team. Younger players, I think he struggled with. I think the younger coaches on this staff are getting more from the younger players. I think you saw that yesterday. Howie's not a terrible drafter. You just got to use the players the right way. Doug Peterson did not. 609-403-0973. Mike, I didn't know what it looked like for wide receivers to be schemed open until yesterday. Smith was so good that he elevated the entire wide receiving core. Milano also contract to steal. Go Birds, F Dallas. I like that. Show me more. Your Smith point is very good. That Smith was so good that he elevated the other guys because you had to account for Smith. And when you have to account for Smith, I love what Sirianni did. We're accounting for Smith. So what do? I go, Watkins, Watkins, Watkins. You went to Watkins 3 times. What? Well, now what happens is I have to account for Watkins. And Watkins has so much speed that if I don't account for him, he's going to go flying right by me. But the Eagles got up in the game, so they didn't have to show that. Very good game plan. Love the way they came out yesterday. Lulled them to sleep and then hit them. 609-403-0973. Paul from Millville. What's up, Paul? Says Jalen Hurts looked comfortable and confident whether he was in the pocket or escaping. This is a great sign, especially when it seemed that Wentz never seemed decisive or comfortable last year. The one thing I'm nervous about is the costly penalties from vets like Lane Johnson, Isaac Seumalo. Those penalties will cost us against better teams. Yes, but 2 things. 1, veteran players shouldn't be getting all sides penalties. You wonder how much some of that is, they didn't play a whole heck of a lot, if at all, in the preseason. Johnson, a little rusty. He didn't play last year. I think they'll clean up the penalties. I think the penalties will be cleaned up, especially because they were coming from veterans. If they were younger players getting stupid penalties, I'd be more concerned. But the fact that it's older players, I think they'll clean that up. Thank you for the text message, Paul in Millville. Or text messages coming in. If you download the free mobile app, you can message us through the app as well. So there's a variety of ways you can get to us. Plus, if you're watching the show live. Greg McHugh on the penalties, he says, first game timing issues, the penalties will be cleaned up. I agree with you. Gabe Rosales is watching the show on YouTube. Gabe says, would like to see a little more production out of defensive end besides Graham. I thought Sweat played a pretty good game. Barnett was okay. Kerrigan, I don't think I didn't see the snap counts from yesterday. That's something I didn't see after the game today. Let me see if I can find those snap counts real fast. I didn't see Kerrigan on the field. Here we go. I got the snap counts right here. Ask and you shall receive. Snap counts yesterday. Kerrigan, 34. Okay, he played more snaps than I thought. Graham, 36. Kerrigan, 34. Barnett, 33. Sweat, 39. Fletcher and Hargrave, 41 and 40. A lot of the snaps came from the safeties. Harris, Nelson, Slay, Wallace. They were your snap leaders on defense yesterday. That's from Gabe, who's watching the show on YouTube. All right, let me go back to some more of your messages. Phil. What's up, Phil? By the way, Phil is a great tweeter, texter, watches the show. Your boy Djokovic lost yesterday. I was waiting to see Joker what happened in that U.S. Open before I responded to you, but he lost yesterday. That's a little Phil's been tweeting me about Djokovic. Mike, watch the Eagles at a sports bar. Very impressed with the game plan. Couldn't ask for anything better, plus no injuries. I was able to also see some of both Indy and San Francisco. You are right on with your Wentz assessment. Different teams, same issues. Good riddance. San Francisco got a little banged up yesterday, and stinky Lions lit them up when Verrett was out, but they looked good for 3 quarters. Can't wait for the Eagles home opener. That's from Phil D. All right, Phil, thanks, man. There's a lot there. 1, you couldn't ask for anything better, plus no injuries. That is the one thing. Now, on the injury front, Sirianni said Arcega-Whiteside's day-to-day with an ankle. Epps is in the concussion protocol, and that they're being cautious with Ertz. That was it, really, from yesterday. But Epps is kind of key because of McLeod being out. Now, I don't know when McLeod's going to be back or not. All right, what else we got? Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Mike, pump the brakes. The Falcons team made us look great. They could go 0-17. See, I don't like that way of thinking. Of course. But if the Eagles struggle in that game, or if they lose that game, then what are you saying? Of course it's pump the brakes. Nobody's here saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. But they took a bad team and beat the crap out of them in their own building. I don't think it's that the Falcons made you look great. I think the Eagles made themselves look good and made the Falcons look bad. And I don't think the Falcons are going to be very good. Yeah, I think they're going to win 3-4 games. I said I don't think, but I said this on Friday. I don't think the Falcons are very good. But if the Eagles would have gone down there and lost, people were picking them to lose this game. People who follow football said that the Eagles would lose that game. I said, how in your right mind do you have the better offensive line, the better defensive line, and you lose to that team? Just doesn't happen. It doesn't make sense. So pump the brakes. Yeah, if you're someone out there that thinks they're going to win the Super Bowl now, pump the brakes. If you're excited about what could happen with a young core, now here's the one thing. They got to start drafting offensive linemen now. Because they got the skill position players that we think could be pretty good, but they got to start getting offensive linemen now because these guys are getting old and they start to get beat up. All right, Cole from LBI. Mike, the Eagles are going to come in second in the division with around 9 wins. I think the Eagles will lose the next 3 games, but after that, they beat Carolina. They will definitely beat the Lions and Jets, and I think they take both games against Washington and the Giants, so that's 8 wins right there. Well, we're jumping way ahead of ourselves with that text, Cole. Their schedule does, of course, get more difficult. Atlanta is one of the worst teams on their schedule. Mike, what happened to your guy Kyle Pitts? You were so high on him during the draft. He's overrated and will never live up to the 4th pick. It's tough to judge guys based on where they are in one game. I don't like the way the Falcons used him yesterday. And their offensive line stinks. By the way, Raheem Mostert has a chipped cartilage in his knee. He'll be out 8 weeks, so no Mostert next week for San Francisco. I said he was my boy because I would like him on this team. I don't love him on that team. That team, I don't like the offensive weapons. I don't like their line. Their line stinks. They don't have much of a running game. I don't like the way they used Pitts yesterday. He could be my boy. If he was here, I don't think we'd be having the same conversation. I think we'd say, man, they really utilized him well. I don't think Atlanta utilized him very well yesterday. In fact, I think they downright was malpracticed the way they used him in that game yesterday. That being said, Ryan had no time. He was getting pressured all day. But sure, he didn't have a good game yesterday. Well, I think a blind guy could have figured that out. Nick from Galloway says, it's been a long time since I enjoyed an Eagles game start to finish. Sirianni seems like a good combo of friend and fire. Hurts keeps proving people wrong. Excited for this season. You said it all right there, Nick. I agree with you. I think Sirianni's got a very good temperament to be good cop and bad cop. They respect this guy. That's evident. And I kept saying, I like Hurts. The guy's a winner. He's a winner in almost like a Tebow type of way who can play. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Tebow just couldn't play at this level. But people wanted to play for him. I think that's the same thing in this situation with Jalen Hurts. I think players just want to play for him, but he can play. All right, that's Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Hey, I want to tell you, Week 1 might be in the books, but the season's just getting started. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. To kick off Week 2, DraftKings is giving all new customers a can't-miss offer. Bet just $1 on any football game this week and receive $200 in free bets instantly no matter what. That's right, DraftKings Sportsbook, giving all new customers $200 in free bets instantly when they bet at least $1 on any football game. DraftKings, safe, reliable, secure, making it easy for you to deposit, withdraw your money at your convenience. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use my code 973 to receive $200 in free bets when you place a $1 bet on any football game. That's promo code 973 to get your $200 in free bets instantly. This week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. You must be 21 or older, New Jersey only, new customers only, restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, when we come back, 3 up, 3 down, 3 who stepped up, 3 who disappointed. That's next. Hey, Sports Bash is brought to you by East Coast Roofing, Siding, and Windows, serving all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up online at eastcoastroofing.com. I'm Mike Gill. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Gill Show. Download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play. You can message us through the app. It's easy to do. So if you're listening on the app and you want to get your message to the studio, just hit the message us button and we'll get you on the show. Also, if you're watching the show live, hit us up in the comments section, 609-403-0973 on the text board as well. So many ways you can get involved on a Sports Bash Monday. Eagles 32, Falcons 6. What stood out to you? Have your expectations changed based on 1 week? I think that my expectations haven't changed because I said they'd be good as long as the offensive line stays healthy. That offensive line is healthy, this team's going to be solid. I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl, but in this division with that offensive line, they can compete. And their schedule is one of the easiest in football. They might be 1-5 and still be competitive in those games. All right, this is 3 up, 3 down. These are 3 players or things that stood out in the game, 3 things that were up, 3 things that were down from the Eagles game on Sunday. Let's take a look at 3 things that were up. Let's start with the good from the game on Sunday. Okay, 3 up, 3 up, 3 up. Here we go. Number 1, got to be Jalen Hurts, right? Hurts showed he belonged. He had a tremendous handle on the Eagles offense. He spread the ball around, didn't panic, and most importantly, he didn't turn the ball over. 27 of 35, 264, 3 touchdowns, adding 7 carries for 62 yards. His top 2 wide receivers, Devonta Smith, 6 catches for 71 yards and a touch. Jalen Reagor, 6 catches, 49 yards and a touch. They both scored in the game. Jalen Hurts, you're up. Number 2, Javon Hargrave. He caused problems all day, but his 2 sacks were demoralizing for the Falcons offense after missing week 1 last season. He opened this season with a bang, playing alongside Fletcher Cox allowed Hargrave to have a big season. He had 6 tackles and 3 quarterback hits in the game. Javon Hargrave is up. And number 3, this one's a little outside the box. There's so many candidates, okay, for up this week. I could have gone with a bunch. But I'm going to go with Aaron Sipos, right? The punter won't typically make this list, and there were a lot of options, as I said. However, playing in his first ever NFL game, he had a big impact in backing the Falcons up inside the 20 3 times. His 4 punts sailed 189 yards with a long of 54 on the day. Safe to say, it looks like the Eagles have found their punter, Aaron Sipos. Who even knew he was the punter before the season started? Who even knew he was the punter yesterday? Aaron Sipos, you're up. All right, here's down. After a win like that, you hate to go negative. And guess what? It was hard finding 3 down yesterday. Number 1, penalties. This game could have been uglier if not for the 14 penalties for 89 yards, many of which came from the offensive line, who otherwise dominated the game. Multiple offsides penalties from the offensive line, 2 holding penalties from Hassan Ridgeway were really the most glaring issue in the game on Sunday. Number 1, penalties, down. Number 2, tackling. Early in the game, the Eagles defense had their issues, missed tackles and giving up some yards on the ground. It looked like the linebackers were going to be an issue against the run early in the game, but the Eagles' bend, don't break defense kept the Falcons out of the end zone. They got better as the game went on, giving up 124 total rushing yards and allowed a total of 102 yards in the second half total. They only allowed 114 yards after the Falcons' first 2 offensive drives, both which resulted in field goals. But tackling was an issue early in the game. They did a much better job as the game went on. And number 3, punt returns would be next on my list of the down. Again, I said it was hard to find 3, but I think this has been an issue since Darren Sproles left a couple of years ago. The team really hasn't been able to find a reliable punt returner. Where's Reno Mahe when you need him? On Sunday, Jalen Reagor had 4 punt returns that averaged 4.9 yards per return. He had 4 punt returns for 19 yards. Not good. So honorable mentions for the up category would have been the offensive line, obviously. I thought I could have put Nick Sirianni in that list as well. Could have put Jonathan Gannon in that list as well. But I went with Sippos because I don't know how many times the punter is going to make the up category unless you get beat pretty bad and he has a really good day punting. I thought he really made a difference in the game. Anybody else okay with Aaron Sippos being in my up category? And in the down category, penalties, tackling, and punt returns. The only other guy I could put in the down category, I guess, is there an individual player that I could put in the down category? I mean, if I'm really being nitpicky on this one, I could say someone like, I don't know, Fletcher Cox didn't have a tackle in the game. He didn't really show up in the stat sheet. I'm not putting him in there. I thought he was a big factor of why. Ridgeway would be the guy who had 2 holding penalties on the defensive line, but he ended up with a sack. He had another sack that wasn't a sack because he had 3 quarterback hits, Ridgeway. And that led to T.Y. McGill getting cut today. Hey, this Ridgeway guy's not so bad. McGill, thanks for playing. So they're my 3 up, 3 down on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. We'll do that each week, 3 up, 3 down from the game. And go to our website, 973ESPN.com, and check out the 3 up, 3 down story to get a photo gallery of the Eagles' opening season win at the Falcons, featuring Jalen Hurts, Javon Hargrave, and Miles Sanders. Kenny Gainwell, I thought, was another guy who really, it appears to me that Sirianni trusts Gainwell way more than Boston Scott. I don't even think that's a question. Boston Scott, I don't remember carrying the ball yesterday. I don't remember him getting a touch at all yesterday. In fact, Gainwell had 9 carries. Sanders had 15. Gainwell also had 2 catches. Miles Sanders had 4. So he did everything about half of Sanders and did a really good job. He scored a touchdown. He actually had 2 touchdowns. One got called back. The one touchdown that he did score, Gainwell, the offensive line was so dominant on the play. I mean, Kenneth Gainwell had acreage of land to kind of run through in that hole that was created by Jordan Mailata, who just absolutely engulfed the defensive end. Sayamala and Kelsey double-teamed the nose and just absolutely crushed the nose tackle. And Gainwell just absolutely hit the hole. Boom, touchdown, untouched. So there you go. They're my 3 up and 3 down here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. All right, when we come back, it's the moment you guys have all been waiting for. I know it because right at this time, 4 o'clock every day is when the viewership starts to go through the roof. It's Football at 4. Jeff Mosher's here. His 10 observations on the game from Inside the Birds and the Inside the Birds podcast. Mosher's here. Football at 4 is on the way. Plus next hour, in the 5 o'clock hour, one thought every game, Casey Joyner. One thought every game, Casey Joyner, 5 o'clock. It's a tradition like no other during the football season right here on the Sports Bash. 5 o'clock Mondays and Fridays, one thought every game. Casey Joyner from The Athletic. He joins me here tonight at 5 on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And don't forget, download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play. It's free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long at the Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Resort Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is here, and I would imagine, Jeff, that you are somewhat surprised at a 32-6 dismantling of the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know what you had as a pick in the game. I don't remember whether you took the Eagles or the Falcons, but I would imagine you didn't think it would be a domination.
No, I took the Falcons, Mike. I was the only person out of the four of us on our pregame show to do that, and my theory was that I felt that it was a coin flip game, and that Atlanta being the home team and also the team that had a little bit more, obviously more experience at the quarterback, more experience at wide receiver. I felt the Eagles were the better team in the trenches, and that always gives you a chance to win. Just didn't really know what to expect. It's not that I thought the Eagles couldn't win. I just kind of gave the experience factor and the home factor of the Falcons, and boy, did that not matter at all.
No, and I picked Philly, and I had them pretty handily, mainly because of what you said, the trenches. I thought the Eagles' offensive line, and that's what I've been saying all offseason, Moses. I think their offensive line is very good. Until somebody gets hurt on that front five, they will have the better offensive line in almost every single game they play, which means they should be able to compete. But to compete, you have to have the skill players make plays. So let's get what you saw on Sunday from really Hurts. Let's start with him to make us feel better about the skill players being able to make plays. If the line plays well, what did we learn about the skill set, those skilled players?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of speed on this offense as compared to years past when, since after 2017, after Torrey Smith was traded to Carolina, they've tried to get speed, Mike Wallace and then Deshaun Jackson and drafting Jalen Reagor last year. But for injury reasons, mostly, they just haven't been able to get that speed on the field, and they've had to be a two tight end offense a lot more than they've wanted to be. But now with Jalen Reagor healthy, Devonta Smith healthy, Quez Watkins in year 2 starting to be a little bit more productive, add that to that Miles Sanders. And Miles Sanders isn't just looking around by himself wondering where all the dynamic playmakers are. He's got some people among him in the wide receiver group. And I think that enabled Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, Kevin Petullo, the offensive brain trust, to go into this game and say, let's do our best to show as many different formations as possible. We can play 11, we can play 12, we can move guys around, we can use our running backs who have also good speed and pass catching ability, and we'll throw the kitchen sink at them from a formational standpoint. And for Jalen Hurts, the big takeaway for me, Mike, is that when you go on the road and you're making your first official start as the Eagles starting quarterback, I know he started, 4 games last year, but I think every week Doug would never say he's definitely our starting quarterback, right? So it's official. It's your first time. No turnovers. I thought that was really big. I mean, he did not put the ball in harm's way very often, made good reads, quick, accurate delivery. And again, that's a function of the offense that was designed. But the fact that he was able to, on a few occasions, get out of some trouble, make a throw on the run or throw the ball away, and no fumbles or turnovers was fantastic.
All right, let me get your thoughts on just the game that Sirianni called, the formations, the way they looked, the different looks they showed.
Yeah, and I was expecting to see a lot of different formations, but not that many different. And not just formations, but also play designs, RPOs, read option. I mean, high-low routes, crossers. You really had the whole, like I said, the whole kitchen sink there. It looked like the Eagles had more than a week to prepare for this game, which they did. But so did every other NFL team as you get trained at the end of training camp. But it felt like the Eagles were able to execute mostly everything they wanted to execute. In other words, when I watched that game, Mike, it was almost so clinical in a way. And I would say most of the time, and I haven't watched the tape yet, but it felt like Jalen Hurts, for the most part, got to get the ball to his first read when he wanted to, that it seemed like very almost Kyle Shanahan-esque in the way that everything seemed intentionally schemed and worked. You watch a 49ers game, right? And it's mind-boggling just how every play seems to have somebody isolated so that they can get the ball and nobody's within 5 feet of them. So that it felt like that at times, that every button they were pushing was working, and that it was all not just the first 15 plays, but it's almost like the entire playbook was scripted there and things were just working bang, bang, bang.
Interestingly enough, you look at Sirianni on the offensive side, the defensive side of things, Jonathan Gannon's defense didn't get out of the gates nearly as crisp, but he made some adjustments and tweaks in that game. What did he do? They didn't give up points. They gave up a lot of yards in the first 2 series. But after that, how were they able to shut Atlanta down after the first 2 series?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was more on what Jonathan Gannon did or more so what the offense did. I think the defense obviously was bend but not break for the first 2 series, and to hold them to field goals and only 6 points instead of 14 was crucial. But once the Eagles went up 15-6 in the third quarter on the Gainwell touchdown, now you're up by, maybe it was 22-6 after that one. Once they went up double digits, Mike, that put Atlanta in a position where it couldn't just start running the ball all over them again. They really had to pass. It was not their strength. Matt Ryan was holding on to the ball at times, and at other times he was just feeling the rush. And once I felt that it became a double-digit game, it made the Falcons very one-dimensional, and that was a dimension that was easy for the Eagles to attack because, as we said, they were going to be stronger up front than the Falcons' offensive line. So they got to tee off more so. And then every once in a while, Atlanta would try to pop a run in there, and it didn't work. But I definitely think that's something we can keep an eye on more, say, this Sunday when the 49ers come to town, because they like to run, and they like to come up with run schemes that really specifically cater to the defense's weaknesses. And I don't know that much changed. I did see some guys up on the line of scrimmage in the second half, but we'll have to see how that unfolds on Sunday. That's one of the things where you're kind of, I want another week to judge that before I make any decisions.
Well, in the preseason, they were terrible against the run, and they were bad against the run for at least a half yesterday. So is that the Achilles heel that needs to be fixed?
Well, I think one thing we talked about a lot on Inside the Birds going into the year is that Jonathan Gannon was going to have to figure out a way to scheme his run defense, meaning you don't just line up and play the run. You intentionally do things, whether putting an extra guy in the line or shooting the A gap per se right at the snap, because you're trying to funnel the run in a certain direction. And it would be best for the Eagles to funnel the run to the edges, because Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton are much better at running sideline to sideline and making tackles than they are downhill. They're not downhill guys. They're not very big, and they don't get off blocks the way some of the better linebackers in the NFL do. But I guarantee you that Kyle Shanahan, as we bring this up again, is going to try to do whatever he can to get his athletic, mobile offensive linemen out into space and up into that second level to cover those guys up and run at them, because they have to prove that they can stop the run. And the 49ers can score points. The Falcons could not. So the Eagles can't just say our run defense will be reliant on us just having a lead and making the other team have to pass. And they've got to be able to stop the 49ers from getting like 6 or 7 yards on first down and setting up those back-breaking 2nd and 3rd or 2nd and 4 where it's play action all day long.
Well, let me ask you this. You have Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts that we were all kind of waiting to see. How are the Eagles able to kind of neutralize those two? They didn't get beat with the big play at all in the game.
Yeah, obviously this is a new style of defense, and Jonathan Gannon does a lot differently on the back end that Jim Schwartz would do. He plays a lot of different coverages, including 2 safeties deep occasionally, some inverted Tampa 2, some cover 1 robber, which is when the safety looks like 2, and then the safety kind of runs to the middle to kind of patrol that area and take away that short field. So first of all, Matt Ryan didn't always know what defense he was going to be throwing at once he snapped the ball. And then secondly, he gave some protection to his wide receivers by having a safety deep. And third, when the pass rush was as good as it was against the Falcons and a bad Falcons O-line, it's really it's tough in general to get your offensive passing game going.
Yeah, I think that will be interesting to see down the road, because last year Slay had some troubles with those big play wide receivers. And I thought he did a really good job with Ridley yesterday. And as you mentioned, I thought Hargrave and Fletcher Cox, those two, Cox didn't show up in the box score at all, but they had to double him, and Hargrave took advantage of he absolutely, and Ridgeway got poor T.Y. McGill cut.
I know. How dare him? No, there was a lot of pocket pushing going on there. And look, you saw in the first quarter the respect, because I wouldn't call Matt Ryan the most athletic quarterback in the world, but Arthur Smith certainly designed a lot of plays that had Matt Ryan trying to roll to the right, roll to the left, get him on the run, which I don't know is his strength, but he knew he had to get Matt Ryan away from the interior of the offensive line, where Jalen Mayfield, the kid from Michigan, was making his first start as a rookie. He obviously struggled. So they had to kind of come up with creative ways to try to get that passing game going. And it did early on, but then it stopped. In fact, I can't remember ever watching a game. We talked about this on the pod, Mike. Maybe you would agree. I think Calvin Ridley had 4 catches on the first drive, right? And it was like bang, Calvin Ridley, bang to Calvin Ridley, bang. And then there was a sequence for the Eagles where Quez Watkins caught 3 straight balls, like bang to Quez Watkins, all screens, and then like 3 series
later. The first 3 plays of the game. The first 3 plays of the game were Watkins.
And then later in the game, there was that sequence where Jalen Hurts targeted Devonta Smith 4 times in a row. I've never seen such guys targeted that often, that frequently in such a cluster before, but then you almost didn't hear about him for the rest of the game. Calvin did nothing after that. Quez Watkins didn't do anything after that. And of course,
yeah, but I'll tell you what, Jeff, the Quez Watkins thing, I really was impressed by, because I love the way that he said, I'm going to go to Watkins 3 times. It made you have to account for him the rest of the game, like because of his speed, that if he just goes streaking down the seam, you had to pay attention because, he's in the game plan. We have to pay attention. They never went back to him, but that's like something that they could shelf and use, 2-3 weeks down the line where we don't show, and then boom. So I love that they went to, it was like, of all guys, Watkins gets the first 3 plays, but I think there was a method behind that madness.
I also think, I think they started off in the hurry up too, just like Atlanta did. So they clearly found a defensive look that they felt a swing pass to Watkins was good for, and then they hurried it up, and then Atlanta gets right back in defense. They're playing the same look, so we're going to do it again. It's almost like we're going to do this because you're in a look that you can't stop this.
Yeah.
And then obviously eventually the clock stops, or there's an incompletion, and they get to substitute and things change. But I agree with you that it loosened up the Atlanta defense at first, and then they had to kind of respect that speed and on the quick swing pass for the whole game.
Well, and they went with the first play call of the game is the play they use against Pittsburgh. And it was like, look, accentuate the positives. Like, how many times were you saying, like last year, it seemed like the Eagles offense was, John Hightower, just run straight down the field and let's see if we can air one out. And look, they didn't take any shots down the field from my recollection yesterday. Everything was a little too safe almost. I don't want to say too safe. That sounds like a negative, but they didn't take very many shots, if any, yesterday, whereas last year, all they did was take shots, and it's like, you got these guys that can work well in space and didn't utilize them. So that was what I liked.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I thought that there was probably more formational variety in the first quarter of yesterday's game than there might have been all of last year. And you're right, it was opposite in that there was not a lot of vertical presence to the game. It seemed like the coaches, the team, the whole concept was we can move the ball horizontally against this defense and just kind of march up and down the field using everybody at our disposal. I mean, the deepest pass, I think, went to Zach Ertz. So they were able to do that, and it worked. But I would tend to agree with you, not to attach a negative connotation to it, but obviously, as you go on, it
wasn't necessary
opportunities to drive the ball. You're going to have to do it. Yeah.
Right? It wasn't necessary to take your shot. So shelve those plays for another week. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to use play action, because we saw like no play. We saw RPOs, but nothing, really play action wise and setting things. I think they used this week to set things up in weeks down the road, because the game kind of got away from Atlanta. There was something else. I thought the running back tandem, Sanders, and I think we found out that Kenneth Gainwell's your other guy.
Yeah, we've been saying that on Inside the Birds for a while, that as long as Kenneth Gainwell showed in training camp, in OTAs, that he could handle the workload, understand the base offense, understand the installs, not put the ball on the floor, do what he's supposed to do, he's going to get a role, because we knew how much the coaches liked him. We knew what kind of characteristics they like in a running back like him, and that they would use that opportunity to get him on the field early. I've been saying it all season long. He will be on the field early in the year as long as he can handle it, and he has handled it, and he is right now the number 2, and he is going to be used, and he is being used the way the Colts used Nyheim Hines. That's his role.
Talk with Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. Eagles win 32-6. The offensive line was absolutely dominant. I want to get your thoughts on the Mailata contract, and good move, bad move. Did they jump the gun on this? How did he play? Give me your overall view, because I had people like, this was a terrible wild. They needed to wait to see more of him. This is a classic Eagles move, though. Identify young talent, sign him early. The problem is, this guy's going to be so good that 2 years from now, he's going to be saying I'm underpaid.
You're absolutely right. And that's why he only signed, I'm guessing, a 4-year deal. I'm guessing that's why it was only offered, because he's got a short sample of playing in the NFL. So he will have an opportunity to get another contract in 2 years if he makes 2 Pro Bowls. But at that point, I think the Eagles even understand that if that's the case, that they would have to they've done that before. They've done it with Lane Johnson. They've done it with other players that when they look like they're young and ready for a second or a third contract, they'll give you more money to make you, kind of commensurate with what the market is, especially when you're young and you're on an offensive lineman. They treat those guys really well. So we'll see in 2 years. Look, I think it's one of the moves that I can't, if someone says it's a terrible deal, they may not necessarily be wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, they may be right. And if someone says it's a great deal, at the end of the day, they may be right. It's just impossible to look into the crystal ball and figure out what this guy's value is. It's just, there's no comps to it, right? A 7th-round pick who's a starting left tackle and a really good one. I mean, I'm sure it's happened before, but I don't know if you looked at all left
Jason
tackles
Peters
now.
was undrafted, right? I mean,
Right,
this happens. There's guys who, offensive linemen, but there's a guy who played no football. Zippo, zero, nada.
Right. Yeah, that's what makes it such a unique negotiation. So you can say the Eagles gave up too much, but the bottom line is, what if he plays really well this year? This is his 4th year. It's his contract year. So if he was playing really well for the first 10 or 11 weeks, he might say, well, now I'm just 5-6 weeks away from free agency and someone's going to pay me, $200 million. Or you're holding the Eagles to the fire saying, look, this guy is going to make this much in free agency. You had a chance to wrap him up earlier for about 10 to 15 million a year less. Now you got to pay the piper. So every contract extension for a young rising player is like that. People thought the Carson Wentz contract was really good when he signed it. Some people did. Some people thought it was also awful. But the reason why people thought it was good was because you're only paying him $26 million a year when Dak's about to go make $40 million. So that's $15 million less, right? It looked good at the time. Now it doesn't. I mean, you just never know.
Yeah. The Eagles are big on identifying the young player and trying to get them under control before they really can make money. That was the Andy Reid era, and you had guys holding out because they thought they were underpaid. Brian Westbrook and Sheldon Brown and like a lot of these players were like, hey, I'm underpaid. Well, you signed that contract 2 years ago. You shouldn't have signed it. And
they changed the rules because of
exactly. Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. That being said, the offensive line was, other than the penalties, you can win with that offensive line, right?
I don't see why not. I mean, I know that the Falcons don't have they're not loaded with pass rushing talent. Grady Jarrett's a good player. And, there were times that he gave them a little bit of trouble, but for the most part, they ran the ball effectively. They threw the ball with protection. I think Jalen Hurts was sacked once. So was he sacked? Yeah, I think he was sacked once. Oh, no, maybe 0 times. So he wasn't under duress a whole lot.
One time.
Okay. Right. So, and again,
by the way, I think it was, the Jarrett, that was early in the game too, where Jarrett kind of pressured him. He went out of bounds.
Right. Well, wait a minute. That shouldn't have been a sack because
that wasn't the sack, but that was one. That was one where you were right. That Jarrett beat Lane. Johnson was kind of up and down.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can definitely knock him for the holding penalties, and maybe in the false starts, maybe that's the lack of preseason time showing up or being on the road in a first game, working on a silent count. There could be a whole lot of different reasons for that. But as far as protection and blocking, they checked all the boxes. for 1 week.
Seeing Brandon Brooks, Jason Kelce, Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson out there was a breath of fresh air. Seeing those guys, I thought Seumalo played pretty well. He had a couple penalties himself, but Seumalo and Mailata together on that side could become, because I thought Seumalo played pretty well when he wasn't getting penalties.
Well, allow yourself to think about this, even though we should all just take it one day at a time. But Jordan Mailata is 380 pounds, not 360 as he's listed. He's 380. And there's going to be a point where Landon Dickerson's going to get in this game. And maybe it's at left guard because either Seumalo gets hurt or Seumalo is playing center and Jason Kelce's not. I don't know. But there's going to be a time where you got a 380-pound Jordan Mailata and a 355-pound Landon Dickerson next to each other, putting a combo block on some defensive lineman who's about 302 on a good day or 310, right? That's going to be interesting to see.
Well, I'll tell you what, Moshe, it's funny you say that because earlier today I said, the young skill players with this aging offensive line, they're going to start having to replace Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, Jason Kelce. Now, you got Dickerson. He's going to replace somebody, but you're going to have to start infiltrating younger offensive linemen to go with these skill position players. For this year, it might just be a pretty good storm.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're high on Jack Driscoll. He's on IR with a broken hand. He'd be a top backup right now as guard and tackle. I don't know if Nate Herbig is somebody they see as a starter, but I do think they see Jack Driscoll. They see starting potential, and he had a nice camp. He played well last year toward the end of the year as he started to get more time. I get it. He was a rookie picked in the 4th round, but there's no doubt in my mind, unless they make more moves in the draft, which is always possible with all the picks they have, but that they view Landon Dickerson certainly, and I think very favorably they view Jack Driscoll as a potential interior offensive lineman going forward.
Real quick, thoughts on Devonta Smith?
Oh, man. You know what he said after the game was like, somebody asked him, when did you know you were going to get a touchdown? And he said, as soon as we lined up. And so I saw man-to-man. And you just love that kind of attitude. Did a nice job. Caught the ball when it was thrown to him. There was a couple in traffic, too, where, he absorbed a hit, got up. Everything's good. Look, he's about as smooth of a route runner as I've seen from an Eagles rookie wide receiver, God, maybe ever. I mean, I'm trying to think of the rookies that came in and had route running ability like that. Jason Avant was pretty good. Deshaun was not the type of guy who ran 6 or 7 different routes to perfection. He was a deep ball guy. Jeremy Maclin was a pretty good route runner, but coming out of that Missouri spread, I think not in the same echelon as Devonta Smith as a rookie route runner. So it's been really impressive to see and very unique to see.
All right. Week 1 in the books, and the guys over at the Inside the Birds podcast have plenty more on this. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast, Apple Store, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts, or Google Podcasts, Apple, whatever they're called. You know where you can get them, wherever you listen to a podcast. If you don't know where you listen to a podcast by now, that's on you. I'm a Google guy. I get mine in the Google podcast area. Jeff Mosher, at Jeff Mosher NFL. Check out his 10 observations on the Eagles over at InsideTheBirds.com. Tomorrow, Andrew DeCecco's thoughts on Kenneth Gainwell's role in this offense. Check that out for tomorrow's football at 4. All right, Moshe, week 1, man. It's in the books. It goes fast.
It certainly does. I'll talk to you Wednesday.
All right, that's Jeff Mosher. He will be back on Wednesday from the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, Football at 4 is brought to you by here on the Sports Bash each and every day at 4 o'clock. We talk NFL. It's brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destination all season long at Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Atlantic City. Book your game day experience now at Caesars.com. This hour of the show, it's brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. Saturday night, I was over at one of the sports books, and all I kept thinking was, man, PropSwap. I got to go get tickets and PropSwap those things. I did hit my 3-team college parlay on Saturday night. Now, I said the lines to Josh, and he kind of looked at me like, wait a second. They were in games. West Virginia was up like 45-0 at one point, and the line was 61. It was 45-0 in the third. The line was 61. So I took West Virginia plus the 61. That was a winner. Who else did I UTSA. I don't even know who that is. but they were playing Lamar. That was a winner. Tennessee, what was that? Texas, San Antonio.
Yep.
And who was the other one? Oh, Iowa State. Iowa State was getting 16.5. I figured they were at home. They'd get a late score. They did. That was my 3-teamer. So I'm 1-0 on the year. My bets. Josh is doing better, although my winning percentage is better. By the way, Ryan Fitzpatrick is placed on injury reserve. He's expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks with a hip injury. The quarterback position in the NFC East is already on its head. We got more on week 1, but I want to hear more from you. 609-403-0973 on the text board. 609-403-0973. Reading and reacting to your reactions to week 1 next. Sports Bash 4 o'clock hour brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. Tomorrow, we'll do who's in, who's out. And on Wednesday, the Fine Five, Ugly Five after all the games are played. The last game tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. It is Raiders and Ravens. I'll give you thoughts on that game. Casey Joyner, one thought, every game coming up at 5 o'clock tonight. I am Mike Gill, at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. And download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play, and you can message us through the app. Got a couple messages through the app I want to read. This one's from Cole in Atlantic City. It's a long one, Cole, but I'll do my best to answer as much as I can in your text message. Let me put the video screen back on. There we go, so the people online can see us. All right, this is from Cole in Atlantic City. He messaged us through the app. He has the free mobile app. Thank you, Cole. He says, Mike, I agree with a lot of what you're saying with regards to the Birds. Great start, a lot to build on. That said, okay, here's where the negative comes, I guess. Hurts most definitely will need to push the ball down the field a bit more to be successful moving forward. While you love to see the ball getting in playmakers' hands quickly, eventually teams will bring their safeties up and jam at the line with their corners, forcing you to attack immediate and the deep. This week was extremely skewed to check down and dump it off. Need to keep defenses honest and worried about protecting, covering the entire field. All right, let's stop there. You are 100% right. And I said with Moshe, they got to take some shots down the field. They didn't need to. They have the personnel to take shots down the field, though. They didn't have the personnel to take shots down the field in the past. John Hightower, not a polished route runner. Now they got Devonta Smith. They've got Jalen Reagor. They've got Quez Watkins, guys who have a lot of speed, and they can take their shots down the field because you have to now account for the underneath stuff, and these guys have so much speed that you have to bring the safeties up because if they bubble screen you to death, in the open field, these guys are tough to tackle. So I agree with what you're saying. Now, the question is, can Jalen Hurts make the deep throw? Can he have good ball placement down the field? That remains to be seen. I don't think they took a shot down the field once yesterday. All right, Cole in Atlantic City goes on to say, let's see. Speaking of safeties, Mike, the range of ours looks to be a bit of an issue. You hope the return of McLeod shores that up. And for those worried about the linebackers, the one thing they do very well is tackle. With Cox eating up a guard and center at the same time, they can stay clean and are free to do what they do best. Not concerned there at all. A nice start to the season for sure. Well, yeah, I agree with the Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave. Those guys will do the defensive line is a strength to this team. Your defensive line is one of the big assets that this team has. That should help against the run. The linebackers do tackle. I would agree with Singleton especially. He's a tackler. Wilson's, I wouldn't, but your safety point is valid. I mean, Anthony Harris is a good safety. He's better in coverage than he is against the run. Wallace and Epps are two different types of safeties. The problem is Epps got hurt in the game yesterday. He's more of your pass defensive safety. Wallace is more of your run stuffing safety. And McLeod, of course, not being out there, I think is a big factor. What is going to happen when McLeod gets back? What kind of McLeod are you going to get? So what kind of McLeod are you going to get when he comes back? I think is a big factor on where this defense can go on Cole's text. 609-403-0973. Joey D checks in from Ventnor City. Eagles had a great game plan, Mike. They executed it. Didn't ask Hurts to do too much. Great play designs to get the ball into the playmaker's hands quickly. Hurts missed some throws, but didn't make any costly mistakes. Great pocket awareness all day. The big throw that he missed was the Ertz one. That was a Wentz throw where he had the guy open. He completed the pass, but he just threw it underthrown. Threw it underneath. Couldn't get the air out underneath of it. Right? So if that throw is completed, you would think if that throw is completed that a big play would be there. But Hurts, they talked about it on the broadcast. By the way, I thought Greg Olsen was great yesterday. He was very good. we've been hyped about Greg Olsen being a broadcaster for like the last 3 years, it seems like. I thought he was great yesterday. And Burkhardt's solid. But it was so good that I actually tweeted it out. Like, I thought the need, because broadcasters get blasted. Oh, this guy's he's talking bad about my team. He hates my. I thought Olsen was great yesterday. I don't want to say great in that he was like entertaining, but I thought he was informative. I thought he knew his stuff. I thought he was good. I thought he was really good. And Greg Olsen brought up a great point. He said, as he grows into the offense and the game, he'll understand that he can rip that throw. He could step right in and rip that thing. I think he was a little like, oh my God, this guy's so open, I don't want to miss him. You know, that kind of thing. Johnny G in Ocean City says, hey, Mike, what's up, Johnny G? He says, hey, Mike, the Eagles look good, and I bet the over 6.5 wins. They could go 10-7. Atlanta stinks, and Ryan is done. Birds will need a miracle to beat the 49ers. Oh, I wouldn't go that far. A miracle. They beat the 49ers last year, and the Eagles were terrible. Now, the 49ers were banged up last year. That said, and I like the 49ers this year. Here's the thing, and I don't want to get into that game too much, okay? They've lost Mostert, so there's one piece of and Mostert's a pretty key part of their offense. Ayuk did not play yesterday either. You know, keep that in mind. They gave up 33 points to the Lions yesterday, right? And Verrett, their cornerback, done for the year. So already the 49ers are going back through some injury issues here. Jason Verrett is a big player on that team. Raheem Mostert is a big part of their offense. To say they need a miracle, I wouldn't agree with that. I think they're going to be an underdog at home. I haven't seen the line yet. Let me see. Can I get that line for you? Boom, boom, boom. Here we go. Next week is Philadelphia is a 3-point dog at home. Yeah. All right, Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. What else we got? Whew. Good messages today coming in on the text board. Mike, Aaron Rodgers looks done too. I got to be honest. I did not see any of that game. That game was a blowout from like Jump Street, right? That game was out of hand early in that game. So I did not, I say early, I mean, by halftime, it was already 17-3. I did not see hardly any of that game. In fact, I don't think I saw any of that game.
Rodgers looked out of sorts.
I said, real quick, that did Rodgers tank the game on purpose so that he's like, I'm just going to not give any effort until you get rid of me.
I mean, if he did, he looked like a miserable not giving an effort then, because on the sidelines, he had a very despondent look on his face. Like he didn't fully understand what was going on. I think the issues with Bakhtiari didn't help them, but Rodgers threw 2 interceptions he doesn't usually throw. They threw up the stat on the screen that Rodgers threw more interceptions in that game than he threw in the first few weeks of last season. So you could argue that Rodgers and the Packers were either just not on the same page or something was very wrong with the game plan.
Yeah, they just absolutely were Rochambeau'd yesterday.
Correct.
That said, I loved what Peyton did. They just said, we're going to run the ball down your throat. Winston only 14-20, but 5 touchdowns and 14 completions.
And every one of those touchdowns looked like a pristine play or throw. Like every throw by Winston was either that was a great throw or that was a great game plan kind of throw.
Yeah.
It was precise. It was very clean. And you know what? If they can get Jameis to play that way, at least for most of the year, there's no reason the Saints can't win 10 games.
Yeah, they're going to need to throw the ball more than 20 times, though.
No, but I mean with that kind of like efficiency. If they can get Jameis to be efficient, because that's the real problem for him when he was in Tampa. He threw those interceptions because he was having to lead teams back and chuck the ball over the place. But in the game last night, they said, all right, defense, go get the Packers offense. Jameis, you don't have to win the game for us.
All right, Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of week 1 and then one thought on every game with Casey Joyner at 5 o'clock. We're going to go inside the NFC East. Jeff Kerr tonight at 5:25. What is your takeaway? Biggest takeaway from the Eagles win was blank. 609-403-0973. Download the free mobile app and message us through the app. You can get it in the Apple Store or Google Play. Your biggest takeaway from the Eagles win was blank. What stood out more than anything else? Just the biggest takeaway that you take from week one. You entered the game thinking this. You left the game thinking this. Hit me up on the text board. I will read those off. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Your biggest takeaway from the Eagles' victory was fill in the blank and text it to 609-403-0973 or use the free mobile app and hit the message us button. If you're watching the show live, let me know. Your biggest takeaway from the game. You entered the game thinking X. You left the game thinking Y. I want to hear from you. Plus, Casey Joyner, one thought every game is in 17 minutes. 4:47 on a Monday. A lot of people call it Overreaction Monday. I look at it as you're just reacting to what you saw in the moment, and then the following week, everything changes. That's what sports is. You formulate an opinion based on what you have in front of you. All I have in front of me is that the Eagles kicked the crap out of the Falcons. Now, my takeaway is, do I think the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl because they were able to dominate the Atlanta Falcons? Not necessarily. Do I think the Eagles can make the playoffs because they dominated the Atlanta Falcons? I think there's a possibility, but I've said that all along. So what is your takeaway from the win? What did you think going into the game, and how has that changed now after what you saw? 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Message us through the free mobile app. Mike, my biggest takeaway was they look like they're having fun. They look like they were a united team. I just didn't feel that way under Carson Wentz. I felt like this last year, and I feel even more now so that there was a division in the locker room. That's from Carl in Egg Harbor Township. Well, Carl, the whole Carson Wentz thing is interesting because I'm not like a Carson Wentz hater, but you got to call a spade a spade. I think Wentz was a problem. I don't think he was a likable guy. I think we're finding that out now. I think you saw what happened in Indianapolis yesterday, that Carson Wentz was a problem for them. They have one of the best offensive lines in football. They looked like crap yesterday. Why? Why did the line look like crap yesterday? Because Carson Wentz is a stubborn SOB, and he refuses. Here's the problem. Last year was the perfect storm. A bad offensive line coupled with a quarterback who always wants to make the perfect play. Wentz is holding the ball so long, he gets sacked 3 times. He ends up fumbling. That basically seals the game yesterday, right, for the Seattle Seahawks. His QBR yesterday is 26. Awful. He makes bad decisions. He holds on to the ball too long. And why is the offensive line for the Indianapolis Colts, one of the best offensive line in football, being made to look like they had a bad game yesterday? Well, the quarterback laid him out to dry. I don't understand how it went so south for Wentz. I really don't. But the perfect storm last year was a bad offensive line coupled with a quarterback who always wants to make the best play and no playmakers. He didn't have anybody to help him out. Indianapolis does. And even the touchdown. Wentz threw a touchdown pass yesterday to Zach Pascal. The ball was thrown behind Pascal. Pascal helped him out. He had to go back and go get it. The Eagles didn't have a guy to help Wentz out. If he threw that same throw last year, he's getting no help. I thought that text message is a good one, though. Wentz, maybe he's just an unlikable guy. Maybe there was a division in that locker room, and I think that division might be out because, to a man, everybody seems like they want to play for Jalen Hurts. George Lewis is watching the show on YouTube. George says, my biggest takeaway, Mike, was that the Falcons are terrible. I hope the Eagles have another good game versus San Francisco. Then we'll know something. All right, so your biggest takeaway is you thought Atlanta was bad. And that's a fair and fine criticism, that Atlanta's just not a good football team. I would agree with that. That's why I picked Philadelphia to win the game. I wasn't quite on Baldy's level that they were going to steamroll them, but I felt pretty confident. I think I had 28-20 was my pick in the game. I have the scores written. Here we go. Sal Powell, 24-16 Eagles. Andrew DeCecco, 24-20 Eagles. Pete Thompson, 27-13 Eagles. Jeff Kerr, 27-23 Eagles. And I had 28-20 Eagles. So I was closest to the 32 with the 28, 28-20. And Pete Thompson was the closest to the 13, the 6 with the 13. So, George Lewis, your biggest takeaway was that the Falcons are terrible. What was your biggest takeaway from the game? Dr. William Luther Pierce. Doc says, Sirianni is legit and couldn't be a more likable guy. You know, that is a really interesting message there, Doc. Sirianni, every once in a while, like this guy comes out of nowhere, right? Andy Reid kind of came out of nowhere. Andy Reid's probably one of the top 10 coaches of all time. He came out of nowhere. He was a quarterback coach. I'm not one of those guys to say, well, you have to have experience. How do you get experience? You don't get experience unless you get hired to do the job. If I can't become an experienced head coach if I've never been a head coach before, you have to have a feel on somebody. Jeffrey Lurie had a feel on Andy Reid. He had a feel on Chip Kelly. It might have been the wrong feel, but he give him credit. He took the shot. He had a feel on Doug Peterson. Nobody was going to give Doug Peterson a job. But the more likable guy thing is interesting. Nick Sirianni gets it. I mean, the video of him at the wedding in Sea Isle, right? He gets it. He understands what being the head football coach for the Philadelphia Eagles means. He gets that. Dr. William Luther Pierce, thank you for watching the show. More text messages coming in. Mike, I was concerned with how our offensive line was going to do. What? If there was anything you wouldn't be concerned about, Butch and Mays Landing, the offensive line was going to kick the crap out of them. That was the only thing I could guarantee. The Eagles' offensive line is a top 3 offensive line in football when healthy. They are going to win on the offensive line every single week. That doesn't mean they're going to win the game. I'm just going to say the check mark will go offensive line won that battle. Let me read the rest of Butch in Mays Landing's text. He says, I was concerned with how our offensive line was going to do, and I was concerned with Devonta Smith and Jalen Hurts' chemistry, but they both came through. This has to be a rib. Devonta Smith and Jalen Hurts played college football together. If there was one thing that if there was 2 things going into that game, was that the offensive line was going to dominate and that Smith and Hurts at least were on the same page because they knew each other. Butch, thank you for the text. Chuck says the one takeaway from the game was the quality and clarity of the coaching staff. All right, Chuck, I like that. Is that you didn't know what to expect from the coaching staff, and now you feel like you have a quality coaching staff. Hey, look, young ideas are good ideas sometimes. Don't be so stubborn to give young people the opportunity and credit for the work they do. We're in a society that get off my lawn and old is better than young. No, young ideas should be welcomed. Not afraid to say that at all. You know, I coached this year with a 21-year-old kid, 2 of them. And without those 2 21-year-old kids, our team doesn't win the World Series. Those young guys helped me out a lot. I leaned on those 2 young guys a lot. Young ideas are great ideas. The Eagles have a lot of young ideas on this staff. Coming up, one thought every game. One thought every game. Casey Joyner from The Athletic. What was his one thought on this game? Well, we'll get more thoughts on the Eagles-Falcons, but one thought on every game is coming up next. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you could watch the show live, Facebook and, on YouTube and Twitter is where you can watch the show. Also, you could download the free mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle. And what you can do is download the app and message us through the mobile app. Eagles win. We're going to play some sound from the game in about 40 minutes from now. Merrill Reese's calls on the Eagles' victory from the Eagles Radio Network kind of get you all geeked up, right? So stick around in 40 minutes for that. One thought every game, Casey Joyner, as he does on a Monday, to recap all of the action. This hour of the show, Sports Bash, by the way, Casey Joyner on the Sports Bash is brought to you by Cape Regional Health System. For a healthier life, call 609-463-CAPE, 609-463-CAPE. I have so many things that this game brought out. You know, we were asking you, give me one takeaway from this game that you now feel now that the game is over. You went into the game thinking this, and now after the game you saw, you think that. Kevin in Dover says, my biggest takeaway is that they did not make the game-killing penalty on both sides. Also, it's fun to watch the Eagles again. Well, they did have some penalties. That was one takeaway from the game that was a little discouraging. 14 penalties in the game. And a lot of them came from the offensive line. See, the offensive line getting all the penalties is a little bit worrisome. Not worrisome. That's wrong to say. The penalties from the offensive line, I think, can be fixed because they were veteran players. It was Sayamala. It was Lane Johnson. It was those guys. So I think that can be fixed. Let's bring Casey Joyner in and get one thought on every game. But first, let's get his thoughts on what we saw from the Eagles as they kind of steamroll. We talked about it Friday. Brian Baldinger, Casey, said he thought the Eagles were going to steamroll the Falcons. They went down there and did just that. How were they able to really just absolutely control that game against the Falcons?
A big part of it had to do with, I thought going in that the Eagles' speed on defense is going to be a difference maker for them. The Falcons' speed on defense is going to be a difference maker for them. The Eagles came in there and said, fine, we're going to run a bunch of what they call midline plays. Midline plays are inside zone reads and such, but it's designed just to go attack straight up the middle of the defense. You draw a dotted line right up the middle of the defense, and that's where you're attacking. And the Eagles said, we're doing this early, and we're doing this often, and we don't think you guys are big enough or strong enough to attack us. And when they did that, then the Falcons said, well, we've got to protect the midline. They put everybody to the inside, and then like the second half, the Eagles said, fine, they're stopping the midline, or they're trying to, they're adjusting to it. Great, we'll run perimeter. And so you get Kelsey going to the outside, both on screen plays and on running plays, and see him on that one sweep in the third quarter, early in the third quarter, midway third quarter. He turns the corner and just hits downfield and gets a one block on one guy and then gets downfield on another guy and pushes the safety about 5 yards downfield. I mean, that's what they did. I think the Eagles said our offensive line is going to be key to us winning this game. That's the strength of our team. And they utilized it both in the run game and again in the pass game with a lot of screen passes. They said we're going to get this line involved as often as we can. So that was a huge difference maker.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on the offensive line as a whole. This line last year, you and I would discuss how much of a mess they were. 14 different line incarnations in the 16-week season. I think it was a record for most different lines. Mailata, Sayamala, Kelsey, Brooks, and Johnson. Those five together mean what?
They mean they show that Jeff Stoutland is arguably the best offensive line coach in the NFL today, and maybe the best. One of my Philadelphia Inquirer cohorts made a case that he's the best assistant coach in Eagles history. That's how good he is. And the thing is I wrote about it in the Inquirer in the preseason where Kelsey, he had a good season last year, but he struggled. He was less consistent than he had been. And I think it was because you got 14 offensive line combinations, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on him more than anybody else, making calls, things of that nature. And he's the center of the line. If you're trying to do those midline plays, he's going to have to help people that, frankly, he's not used to having to help. Now that you've got all that talent, I think it's one of the reasons I was so glad to see Kelsey do as well as he did, because you're seeing the Kelsey that you saw in past years. And I think you add that to Goddard block better. yesterday when they asked him to block. He blocked better than he had last year. And Seumalo will still Seumalo. I mean, good some plays and bad other plays, and he doesn't handle certain types of situations very well. But all in all, he still even had a solid game for him. And you can get away with an Isaac Seumalo when you've got that much talent around you. So if this line stays healthy, it is a top 5 in the league offensive line. That's how much talent and how good their coaching is in this group.
Okay, now with that comment right there, I've said that all offseason. That's why I think if the Eagles line can stay healthy, I think they can be good. Now, if they get hurt and have the issues that they had last year, that goes out the window. However, what did you see from the skill position players that maybe say, hey, if they lose a guy, do they have the talent at the skill? They haven't had the talent at the skill. They lost Deshaun Jackson, and obviously Alshon was banged up. They just didn't have the weapons. What did you take away from their skill players on Sunday?
I wrote about it for an article I did today for The Athletic. It's my week 1 mega roundup. I answered 30 questions. It's fantasy football centric, but if you're an NFL fan, it has plenty of good information in there for you. And it asks questions for every team. And one of the things that we're asking in the article was about Jalen Hurts' production. And per the research I did last night, Hurts on short passes, that's aerials thrown up to 10 yards downfield. He's 22 for 28 for 168 yards and 2 touchdowns. Only goes 5 for 6 for 96 yards and 1 touchdown of vertical passes. Only 6 vertical passes, but he hit a touchdown on it and got a big play. Sirianni used to be a wide receiver, and the way you're seeing the wide receivers play on this team, you can tell that he has coached them up. He with his staff, of course, but he's in there helping them and coaching them up, and you could see in the way that they blocked. I liked how their blocking was, which is a very underrated thing when it comes to wide receivers, but I liked what their blocking looked like, and I liked the idea that they were able to get them as involved in the short passing attack, and it shows that Hurts, who most quarterbacks with elite skills, they like to throw the ball downfield, they like to take a lot of chances, they want to show off their arm. He was perfectly willing to say, if you guys are going to sit back and play soft coverage against us, fine, I'll keep throwing the ball short all day long. I'll stay patient. We'll keep moving. If he does that all year, this could be a very dangerous group because on short passes, he looked phenomenal yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, Hurts obviously very efficient. Nick Sirianni, I thought, did a good job of accentuating the positives of his players. You know, they come out, they throw the 3 bubbles to Watkins right off the bat, and it almost felt like, you know, I know you're a wrestling guy. It was like a slow burn. It was like he was trying to set up something for down the line, and he said, well, we don't need it this week. I'll shelf Watkins. You had to account for Watkins the rest of the day because they showed they were going to go to him and then never did again. And I thought that opened up the field for almost everybody else.
It did. They were playing in spread offense. You're playing the numbers game, essentially, where you're trying to see, you're going to split the field into thirds, and you're going to read each of the thirds of the field, and you're going to go, okay, well, if they have more players than we do on one side, we won't go that way. If they overplay the outside, we'll have Hurts to the keeper. It's not, it's not the most difficult, most complex offense to do, but it does require making good decisions on your part. And if you've got people who can still stretch the field deep, you're going to cause them to have numbers deeper in the field and things. So you're going to give yourself the options to attack perimeters because your numbers are going to be good there, and because you're attacking deep in the field, and you've got Hurts being able to keep things on keeper. So it's the kind of game plan where it's a simple game plan, and teams will be able to disrupt. If you want to just run numbers all day and try and play that kind of spread numbers game, a defense will eventually do things to make you have to do something else. But until a defense makes you have to do something else, until a defense figures out how to make Hurts and this offense have to do other things, they'll keep doing that all game long because everything that they did in that worked yesterday.
Obviously, the offensive line, let's go back to them and talk about, I mean, Mailata was just dominant. And I want to get your opinion on Saturday. They gave him a 4-year, $64 million extension, which could be worth up to $85 million or something in that range. He's played 10 games. Your thought process or their thought process, did they make the right decision? Did they jump the gun? What do you think about the deal they gave Mailata?
I think that there are times when, what's that old saying, Ernie Accorsi said about elite quarterbacks. He said there's no price that's too high to pay for an elite quarterback. But the key is if you know the quarterback's elite. If you're giving a bunch of money to Matthew Stafford in Detroit, doesn't work out. You get him out to LA, it's a different story. But if you put a quarterback in a situation and you're going to pay him a certain amount of money, that's not, it may only make sense if the player's elite. I think they're realizing with Mailata, they probably have an elite player on their hands, or a top 5 player on their hands. If they got somebody who can protect the backside, then they know we're never going to get our passing game going unless we keep that offensive line going. Plus, I think it says something for Stoutland too, because they realize, let's say they're going to keep Stoutland for that amount of time. They know Stoutland can be able to develop him into that sort of player. If you had an average offensive line coach, if you had a good offensive line coach, then you might say, well, we don't know if we could put that kind of money in there. I guarantee they didn't make that kind of decision without consulting him and asking him, what do you think? And he probably told them, this is what I think this guy is capable of. And they know what his coaching can do for him as well. So I think it's a combination of a number of factors that says, yeah, it's worth it because, I mean, barring injury, but you could say that about any player, this is somebody worth investing in a long haul.
All right. Offensively, 32 points. Defensively, 6 points. What did they do defensively to hold Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, Matt Ryan? How were they able to keep that offense under 300 total yards of offense?
A big part of it was pass rush. I mentioned that article I wrote for The Athletic in the section, because I answered one question for each team. In the section for the Atlanta Falcons, it talks about how Kyle Pitts, he had a team high in targets, 8 targets, and he was tied for third in routes run, 31. So they were wanting to send things to Kyle Pitts. There were good coverage against him, but on 8 of those targets, 4 of those targets occurred when Matt Ryan was under pass rush pressure. And they were able to get pass rush pressure on him consistently. I thought that was a big part of the game. As late in the game, obviously, they were able to get some sacks when things started turning away from that. But they were able to get things done consistently against him. One thing I'm concerned about, though, as far as we talked going into this game, that the Eagles, they used to play a lot of one-gapping defense, get upfield. We've always talked about how they do well in good blocking rate and bad in good blocking yards per attempt. They did very well in good blocking yards per attempt today or yesterday. They did solid. 7.8 yards. That would be above league average. Kind of totaled it would probably get you in the top 10, maybe top 8 in that category. Problem is they gave up good blocking 50% of the time on running plays. They were doing a lot of, I thought, gapping, a lot of area control instead of trying to get up the field. And Atlanta doesn't have breakaway backs, so they weren't able to hit that, to get a lot of yardage off of those plays. Other teams are going to be able to do that better. So if I had to say one thing I'm a bit concerned about for the Eagles is you're going to have to stop the run better than you did, because there are better running teams out there. When you see them, if you give up 50% good blocking rate, they're going to be gaining a lot of yards on you, and it's going to change the dynamic of a game.
All right, Casey Joyner, one thought every game. Let's get into it. Eagles beat the Falcons 32-6. You heard a couple thoughts on that one. We'll recap it at the end. But first, Pittsburgh goes to Buffalo. Everybody was hyping up the Buffalo Bills, but the Pittsburgh defense, they look legit.
They look legit. They got a phenomenal pass rush against Josh Allen. And outside him, if you look at the early in the game, 75-yard kickoff, and suddenly it looks like Buffalo's going to run away with this thing. Steelers stopped them then. They got the blocked punt. They couldn't run the ball well, but then even in the second half, they would get their passing game going. I mean, Buffalo looked like a team that walked in there really overconfident, and the Steelers said, fine, this is who we are this year. And imagine when the Steelers get a better running game, because the running game didn't work yesterday. If they get a better running game with the rest of that team, that's a Super Bowl contender.
All right, over in Cincinnati, this one went to overtime. Minnesota goes on the road. They've got to come all the way back. They go to overtime, and you lose to the Bengals in opening week. That's a tough way to start your season.
It is. I'll tell you, though, Jamar Chase had the second most receiving yards for a Bengals receiver in team history for your first start. I mean, so he had a phenomenal start. And the Vikings, hey, look, I mean, Cousins throws for 351, but that's not who they want to be. They don't want to be a Cousins 300-plus yard guy. They don't want to have to get into those kind of shootouts. They had one of the worst defenses in the league last year, the worst that Zimmer said he's ever seen, and they're not that much better this year. So I'm really, really about Minnesota's defense at this point.
Yeah, I had Jamar Chase. I benched him for Devonta Smith, but I have a lot of questions at wide receiver I need answered, man. But I also have Dalvin Cook. I need more Dalvin Cook in my life. All right, San Francisco, they look like they were up big. Detroit kind of got back in this game, but the 49ers put up 41. They got some key injuries, though, and the Lions are the Lions.
I got to wonder what happened with Trey Sermon, because he was a hyped-up rookie coming into the season, and he was a healthy scratch yesterday. I don't know if something came up or what, but so, I mean, the 49ers were, it's, as is the case with good blocking. If you get good run blocking, you can have average backs, and you can still have a good running attack. They did that. The Lions are the worst secondary in the league, and Deebo Samuel just destroyed them. What I like about Detroit, though, they get down by all those points and they fight back. There were years not that long ago when if the Lions would have got that far down, San Francisco would have put up 50+. Instead, the Lions kept fighting. So give Campbell credit for getting a team at least is going to bite kneecaps.
Let's go to this one was interesting. Tennessee hosting Arizona. Cardinals look great, 38-13. Chandler Jones was Reggie White out there yesterday. Tennessee might actually have to pick up the phone and say, hey, is Andre Dillard available? Because Tyler Lewan looked terrible. He actually said, thank you for whipping me. This might help me learn. But what happened to Tennessee? No Arthur Smith, maybe.
That's exactly what I would lean towards. That Arthur Smith, I mean, mind you, his offense didn't look great yesterday, but he
doesn't have the same personnel in Atlanta.
Exactly. Not same personnel. Doesn't have, but I mean, Derrick Henry and Julio Jones combined, I think it was 53 scrimmage yards between them combined. I mean, that just says something. Their offensive line played badly. Julio lost his cool. His coach is, calling him out today in the press and saying, hey, you can't be that kind of a player. I think that Arthur Smith brought a lot more to that team than what they had expected. And Todd Downing is, hey, it's game one. He's their new offensive coordinator, and you can't judge a guy after one game, but this has got to get a whole lot better because it wasn't, Arthur Smith kind of made it look easy. Let's just run Derrick all the time and go from there. But it was a lot more complex than that. And Downing's got to step up. If he doesn't, Tennessee doesn't have a defense to keep up.
All right, Seattle goes to Indianapolis. They beat the Colts. Tough day for Carson Wentz. Got sacked, held the ball, fumbled. Second verse, same as the first.
It was in Seattle. 4 touchdown passes for Russell, despite throwing, 23 passes yesterday. Seattle can still go vertical. Seattle's going to play their kind of ground game. It's still not going to be what they were. But, I mean, Indianapolis, I don't think that they handle. I think Seattle came in there with a power attack that Indianapolis doesn't tend to handle well. I think they're a more athletic team, and I think they don't handle that type of physicality. And they've got a bad secondary to give up that many big plays because it wasn't just dink and dunk touchdowns. It was long passes. So they got a lot of concerns on the Colts.
All right, let's go to Washington. They've already lost their quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick on the injured list. Tyler Heineke came in, not enough. Justin Herbert gets the win. They beat that really good Washington defense, so the Chargers show they can win a close game finally.
They do, and that was a big problem for them. And the fact they went to the East Coast, 1 o'clock kickoff, tough defense. They've got a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, new head coach in Los Angeles, the Chargers. So, I mean, they had a lot of changes, and they were able to do that. I think if Fitzpatrick was healthy and played the whole game, it might have been a different story. But, again, you got to have a good backup, and Heineke's not good enough yet. I think it's a big problem for Washington. They probably need a quarterback upgrade, or that's going to be a 4-win team.
All right, 2 teams that might win 4 games, the Jets and Carolina. They battled on Sunday. Sam Darnold, did he make the Jets regret giving up on him?
I mean, they like what they got out of Wilson, so I think they're okay. I think that they like where they're at. The Jets have a lot of question marks on their team, but Carolina's got Darnold. Carolina's got 2 good receivers. Carolina has more other talents on their team as well. I think if the ball bounces well, they're a 9-win team this year. I think if the ball doesn't bounce well, they're a 7-win team, but they're still trending upward, and I think they've got something they could build on Darnold. So I think they're finding ways to use Darnold better in their offense than the Jets did.
All right, one thought every game. Casey Joyner from The Athletic and the Philadelphia Inquirer. Jacksonville, Houston. This is a stinker of a game, but the result actually opens eyes. Houston puts up 37. How long is the Urban Meyer experience going to go?
Urban Meyer experience is going to be tough because they've got the worst defense in the league. They don't have a very good offensive line, and James Robinson didn't look that good. And Lawrence, they only gave him half the snaps in preseason. They should have given him a whole lot more than that. Houston, though, they block well. They know what they want to be. Culley knows what he wants this team to be. He gave Ingram a ton of carries, and I think that knowing what they want to be and saying this is what we're going to do, it's going to be simple. We're going to pound teams. I think Houston may win more games than people expect, and I think Jacksonville, I don't think it'll be a 2-win team this year, but they're trending 4 as well.
All right, Cleveland, Kansas City, maybe the most entertaining game of the day. Cleveland goes up big. Kansas City comes back. Biggest comeback in a regular season game for Patrick Mahomes. He's on my fantasy team, 33-29.
You are lucky to have him. He is going to be that good. And again, Kelsey did great and Hill did great. Cleveland, though, get a punter who can handle the pressure. I mean,
unbelievable.
What a gaff. And you could see I watched the replay about 6 times, you could just see that crowd rattled him. That crowd and that punt rush rattled him. Although punt rush they blocked, he just expected it to be there. He wasn't even looking at the ball when it got there. So I think Cleveland, that says something for them that they've got to find a way to get their team to believe they can win those sorts of games, because yesterday looked like they did for a while, but then they thought they were going to ball.
At this time, I'm power washing my porch, okay? So the game's on, but I'm power washing the porch. My buddy's over, and they're doing a shot of the punter. Now I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Why are they showing this guy? Then I saw the replay and said, oh, that's why they showed that guy. Miami goes to New England. Mac Jones, 281 yards, but it's the Dolphins getting a road win, 17-16.
And getting the fumble late in the game, their defense made a big play to get that turnover. It's a big plus for Miami to be able to do this. They beat New England last year at home, and so it shows that Flores can keep up play calm. He's one of the few coaches. You look at a lot of Belichick's disciples, and they don't know how to play Belichick ball. They don't know how to do the things that he did. But I think Flores is a guy who does know how to, at least on the defense. He can implement the same sort of plans and do the same kinds of things, and it says a lot for Miami. I think going into this year, that's a 10-win team that is a playoff club. And what they did last year is not a fluke. This is a team that I think is going to be playoff bound and may make a little noise in the playoffs too.
Very interesting. Devonta Parker, 81 yards in that game. Well, this one here had to be the surprise of the day. New Orleans 38, Green Bay 3. Winston only throws 20 times, but 5 touchdowns. How do they blow somebody out by throwing 20 passes?
They ran the ball a ton. I mentioned in the Athletic article that by the 2-minute warning in the first half, New Orleans had 24 rush plays and 12 pass plays. This is a very run-heavy team, and they can run the ball well, which allowed them to absorb the injuries that they had. Look at they had at wide receiver. I mean, they were missing Thomas. Callaway didn't do anything. They had a little Jordan Humphrey was their third receiver. They've got Adam Troutman. They've got Deontay Harris. This is a group of nobodies among their pass catchers. And yet, again, he throws 5 touchdown passes because he gets in close. Winston does and closes up with the short scores. But that is a run team and a play the defense team. And as long as Winston doesn't make turnovers, that's a team that also is a Super Bowl contender.
All right, Denver goes to New York. They beat the Giants. Daniel Jones, 267 yards, but he was outdone by Teddy Bridgewater. The defense, I thought, for the Giants played well. Their offense, the offensive line is an issue again.
It is. The funny thing is that I thought they'd be historically bad, and they were bad, but they actually played better, I guess, from a relative perspective.
You're too kind, Casey Joyner.
I am. Oh, I was expecting like a 10% good blocker rate. They got like what I think it was 27. So I mean, it's it's still really bad. I just thought they were going to be atrocious. The thing is I mean, that team was built for Barkley. That team was built for a running game, and if you can't run block, Barkley's never going to get anything. He didn't look bad either. It looked like he's going to be coming back better from the injury and things. But give Denver credit. Bridgewater on the road, East Coast game, all of that. And that team has has talent on offense too. Melvin Gordon showing, hey, he wants the extra money. Mind his 70-yard touchdown runs will get you there. So I think Denver's got more talent than people expect. And the Giants, again, that could be a 4-win team if that outline doesn't play better. All
right, then Sunday night football, Rams, not a big surprise. They win 34-13. I guess it was close at some point in the third, but Chicago's offense limited. When do they make the move to Fields? Did that change the outlook for them? And what did you think of Stafford in his first Rams uniform?
I think they didn't want to make the move to Fields because they knew if they put Fields out there against the Rams, things might be just as bad and you'd wreck a rookie. So I think they made an intelligent choice to say, we're going to wait on putting him in there. And Stafford, I predicted before the season, or I do a podcast for the Athletic, a betting podcast, and said that Stafford was a good long shot play for be able to lead the league in touchdown passes because McVay says he gets when he calls a play, he knows he's got all 5 eligible receivers that he can call play for, and they've got tons of talent. Look at Van Jefferson. He's their 3, maybe their 4 receiver, and he's getting a big play as well. Woods didn't even get utilized that much last night, and he offers big plays. So as long as Stafford can stay healthy, big if, but as long as he can, I think the Rams, again, are a strong Super Bowl contender. Last night was not a fluke. That's who they are.
One thought, every game tonight, Baltimore, Vegas. That's the game here on 97.3 ESPN. Ravens ravaged by injuries. Vegas feels 500, and I know that they're opening that building tonight for the first time.
They are. That's the thing that it really throws
with
it
fans,
off.
by the way. First time with fans.
Yeah, first time
I want
fans.
the gotcha people out there to know that I know they played in Vegas last year.
That stadium is beautiful. I was out there a year ago, January, and it is just a gleaming onyx pearl in the desert and things. It's fantastic. But if it weren't for that, I would really think that Baltimore would still win this game, even with their injuries. They've got Joe D'Alessandro as their offensive line coach. They've got a fantastic offensive line. They can run the ball well. They know who they want to be. Their coaches say nothing but good things about Tyson Williams. They think he's a rookie who played well during the preseason. They think, and again, you're just talking midline plays. You're just reading A-gap to A-gap, get upfield. I think they'll be able to run the ball effectively. I still think they'll win. But right now, that crowd is the one thing that makes me wonder if the Ravens might get a little rattled, because that crowd could be nuts for the first home game in Vegas history.
All right, listen to that game tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. The pregame coverage starts at 7:30. He is Casey Joyner from The Athletic. Check out all of his great material at The Athletic, the Philadelphia Inquirer as well. And on Friday, he is back with one thought on every Week 2 game. It starts to move fast. Don't move too fast. Week 2 is here quickly. Casey Joyner will be back on Friday's show. Thank you, pal.
Appreciate it.
All right, Casey Joyner here is brought to you by Cape Regional Health System. For a healthier life, call 609-463-CAPE. That's 609-463-CAPE. Casey Joyner's appearance on the Sports Bash is brought to you by Cape Regional Health System. The Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN. And Monday, Jeff Kerr is here. Now, Jeff Kerr covering the Eagles, of course. The Eagles and the Falcons. We'll get some thoughts on that. The NFC East. Jeff will do a lot of NFC East work. We'll do a lot of stuff on all 4 teams in the NFC East with Jeff Kerr Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. This is the Sports Bash. Don't forget, you can download the free mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle. All you need to do is go to the Apple Store or Google Play or wherever you get your apps and download the free mobile app and then message us through the app. It's easy to do. Hit the Message Us button. Or you can watch the show live. A couple of ways to do it. Search 973 ESPN on YouTube and Twitter. Our Twitter feed always carries the show, as does our YouTube channel, which we always appreciate you guys being a part of. A lot of comments on the YouTube channel today. Greg McHugh says the Eagles made the Falcons look terrible. That's the most accurate way to put it. Well, they did make the Falcons look terrible. I would agree with you, sir. Jeff says, the only takeaway I have is Devontae Maddox needs to work on his tackling. You know what's funny? Maddox had the most tackles in the game for the Eagles on Sunday. I think he had like 10 tackles, maybe 9. Let me see. Maddox had 9 tackles, 1 for loss. He needs to work on his tackling. If that's your leading tackler, needs to work on his tackling. That's a good thing, right? I love you, Jeff Bone. All right, Jeff Kerr, when we come back, follow me on Twitter, at Mike Gill Show. Hey, by the way, Thursday, I'm live at Chickies and Pete's in Atlantic City. And on Thursday's show, I got some big news for you guys out there. It involves the Eagles and this show and how you might be able to go. Thursday, listen, the Sports Bash. Sports Bash on a Monday. It's the first Monday of the NFL season that Jeff Kerr is here. Yes, indeed. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. Holy mackerel. Eagles 32, Falcons 6. Jeff Kerr was one of the staff picks. He had the Eagles winning the game 27-23. So he was 1-0 on the season so far with his picks. But 32-6, Jeff, what was the biggest surprise in the lopsided score? What stood out? What was your biggest takeaway?
That Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts were not a factor at all in this game. Like, Kyle Pitts, what did he end up with? 4 catches for 31 yards, something like that. And Calvin Ridley at 5 for 51. But after that those first two series with Calvin Ridley, he was a non-factor. He was nowhere to be found in that game. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to the Eagles up front, especially on the defensive line. The pressure on the interior really got to Matt Ryan, obviously. And Kyle Pitts, Tony Gonzalez said it best to me last week. This is the week you want to play him because he's going to be a really good tight end, especially in the future. But overall, it's week 1. He's a rookie. And rookies don't do what Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, and Jamar Chase did their first game. They just don't.
All right. So with that, I want to start on the defensive side of the ball because all day we've been talking about the offense. So let's get your defense because early in the game, the first 2 series, it looked like there were yards to be had, but they held the field goals. But how did they cut down the yards? What adjustments did Jonathan Gannon see? Did he make an adjustment or did the players just play better? What happened?
I think he was rotating players and trying to find the right combination. I didn't really get a chance to go deep into the snap count. I know the offensive guys, Jason Kelsey, Jordan Mailata, Brandon Brooks, etc., Lane Johnson, they played 100% of the snaps. But on defense, I had to look. And I realized only Fletcher Cox only played like 59% of the snaps or around that number. So they're really rotating the defensive tackles in and out. But what I really liked, Mike, was the cornerback situation. Steven Nelson played every single snap. They rotated Darius Slay in there. I think Kayvon Wallace did an excellent job. And again, he had to come in for Marcus Epps, obviously, with the concussion. So that was something to look at. But overall, I think it was Jonathan Gannon kind of stuck to his guns a little bit with Eric Wilson, with Alex Singleton. Avonte Maddox stayed in the game. He played a majority of the snaps, played the slot cornerback. I know a lot of people wanted to get on Avonte Maddox for the tackles he missed. How about the day he had in coverage? He had a really good coverage today.
Jeff, you mentioned, the different snap counts. Javon Hargrave, you're right. I looked at the snap counts too, and I said, how much did they rotate those defensive tackles? Well, Hassan Ridgeway had a big day, although he had 2 holding penalties. Hargrave had 2 sacks. Ridgeway would have had 2. They were getting a lot of pressure, but it kind of shows that they trust the other guys other than Cox and Hargrave.
Yeah, I thought Fletcher Cox, and it was funny, Mike. I haven't gotten an opportunity to rewatch the entire game yet. I watched the first half. And I thought Fletcher Cox was in the entire game. That's how much of an impact I thought he had. And then when you see a snap count, you're like, whoa, hold on a second. But yeah, you're right. They did a lot of Hassan Ridgeway and Javon Hargrave. Javon Hargrave, he was an absolute monster in camp. He was an absolute monster in the preseason. And they carried over regular season. He probably had the best camp of probably any player. Everybody likes to talk about Josh Sweat and Jordan Mailata. But Javon Hargrave was really that guy. And he showed it. He was worth every bit of the $13 million the Eagles were paying him this year.
Well, people forget, Jeff, he was hurt in week 1 last year and never really got healthy until really later on in the year.
Yeah, he had that training camp injury, and then
pectoral.
It took a while. Then still getting acclimated to the defense, and you're right. He took off the last 6-7 weeks of the year, and that was the Javon Hargrave they were paying for, and they've still been getting that. So, yeah, you're absolutely right there, Mike. I thought Derek Barnett starting. I didn't think that was odd because I thought Derek Barnett would be the better of the 2 on first and second down, but run stopping. But Josh Sweat had a really good day stopping the run as well. The Eagles really rotated their defensive ends well, their defensive tackles, and they're right. I think they feel confident, and they're deep enough to do this. And when you have your third-string defensive tackle getting 3 quarterback hits, and he should have had 2 sacks, that's a heck of a day.
Yeah. Nick Sirianni said Jalen Hurts was in complete control of his offense. So what was more impressive, the game Sirianni called or the way that Hurts played?
Can I cop out and say both? I mean,
you're free to do what you want, man.
I mean, seriously though, like Nick Sirianni, I can only think of one bad play call. He probably had the entire game, and I didn't even mind the play call. It was 4th and 2. I just didn't like how Kenny Gainwell was in instead of Miles Sanders. That was really my only critique of Nick Sirianni. Called a brilliant game plan today. A lot of bubble screens. Overall, he took deep shots when he had to. The 3rd and 4 call from Jalen Hurts to Devonta Smith was excellent for the first touchdown. You knew that was a touchdown right when Hurts threw it. Devonta Smith got open. And again, I really like how Sirianni just kind of controlled the clock in the second half. The Eagles, in that first quarter, Mike, it was 11 minutes to 4 minutes, Falcons. And you're like, how are the Eagles ahead in this ball game right now? And Nick Sirianni, you got to give him credit. Once he got the 15-6 lead, that 2-minute drill right before the half, he stuck to his guns. He ran the football, did a lot of short, quick passes to move the chains. And when he needed a big throw from Jalen Hurts, he got it. So I got to go both here.
Yeah, all right. Let me ask you about this. The role, Hurts was great. He picked the playmakers. I thought they called a great game. But what role did the offensive line have in allowing it all to unfold?
Lane Johnson said it best. You see when we're all together how good we can be. And they know this. And last year, they had 13, 14 different offensive line combinations. That was the most in the NFL. They played the most linemen in the NFL last year, the second most. I forgot what the actual total was, but you got Brandon Brooks, who was practically an all-pro at guard. Lane Johnson, who's one of the best right tackles in football. Jason Kelce, who is arguably the best center in football. Jordan Mailata, who just seems to be getting better and better and better every week. And the Eagles signed him and paid him. And Isaac Seumalo is an above-average guard. You are going to rack up rushing yards. You are going to protect the quarterback. Jalen Hurts got hit once the entire game. And they didn't even credit the pressure on that to Isaac Seumalo. That was on Jalen Hurts because he just held on to the ball too long. The Eagles' offensive line only gave up, I think it was 6 pressures the entire game. And that's out of, I think they played 41 pass blocking snaps. So times that by 5, it's what, 2? I should
35 attempts for Hurts, right? So, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot of pressure. He got sacked one time. There was one other play where Grady Jarrett kind of forced him out early and he threw the ball away. That resulted in a turnover on downs, or they punted or something like that. But you're right. Clean pocket most of the day, and Hurts made the right reads, and when it wasn't there, he got rid of it. That was something that was refreshing to see. Now, one thing a listener brought up, I don't think they had to, but if they need to, is a shot down the field there, because they didn't take any.
No, they did. I mean, really, the only one they did was, actually, there should have been 2. So Quez Watkins was open on the one play. I think Hurts was sacked. I think it was the play Hurts was sacked. I got to double check that. But Quez Watkins was open downfield, and he would have walked in for an easy touchdown. Then obviously Hurts underthrew the ball to Zach Ertz, which Zach Ertz might still be running if that play was in stride. And I'm not even sure Zach Ertz caught it, but give credit to Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts for hustling up the line and making sure that counted. And then I don't get why the Fox broadcast spent an extra 5 minutes on a play that, ultimately it's where it was incomplete or not, it didn't happen. But yeah, you're right. They didn't take a lot of shots down the field. I thought that was interesting considering the Falcons secondary, but they kind of dinked and doinked their way into wearing down this defense and showed.
Well, I'm thinking, I loved what he did early, and I mentioned this throughout the day. Watkins. He made Atlanta have to account for Watkins almost the whole rest of the game and then never went back to him. But you had to account that Watkins might be a part of the offense.
Yeah, and he is going to play a role in this offense. We saw that, the quick bubble screens, the one, he probably should have had a 1-yard loss and he ended up getting like an 8-9 yard gain out of it. It's what Quez Watkins brings to that offense is impressive. And, when you got J.J. Arcega-Whiteside having a good day run blocking like he does, and I know former second-round pick, but it is what it is. He's on this team. He has a role on this team, and he played it. And, yeah, Quez Watkins, he's going to be a threat. And I'll tell you what, Mike, I wouldn't be shocked if he caught a long touchdown against the 49ers beaten and banged up secondary next week. Which Jason Verrett is out is a huge deal.
It is. And, of course, we will talk more about that game throughout this week. Jeff will be back on Wednesday. Nick Sirianni, had an emotional team meeting before the game. And it seems that this team is really rallying around its head coach. Like, they are taking on the personality of their head coach.
Yeah, he's corny. He's quirky, but he's one of the guys, and it works. And, like I said, when I talked to Jalen Hurts, I tried to get out Nick Sirianni competition because I'll tell you what, I'll save that for after the season. We kind of laugh about it, but yeah, you can tell these guys like him. Every time you mention Nick Sirianni, there's always a big smile. Where it's Jalen Hurts, Lane Johnson, Devonta Smith, whoever it is, and Mike, I gotta say this too. This team is definitely all business. Like you saw it in the Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith press conference yesterday, and it might be because they came from the school of Nick Saban, but the rent is due. It's just week one, whatever line they have. It just seems like, okay, it's just one game, it's all business from there. And I got to give them credit. The Eagles just look at it as, hey, we're 1-0. That's great. We got a game next week.
All right. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, and of course, covering the Eagles, 97.3 ESPN.com all season long. What do you make of, I know Devonta Smith had, he had a touchdown on his first catch. He goes out and scores there. And then he says, hey, when'd you know we had a touchdown? Well, when I lined up and saw man coverage, I know I'm winning that battle. But what did he bring to the offense?
Well, a number one wide receiver. That's one thing, Mike. I mean, the Eagles were bottom 4 in like every major receiving category last year for wide receivers, catches, receiving yards, and receiving first downs. And Devonta Smith changes all that. He was the go-to guy on that one drive. And I got to give Devonta Smith a lot of credit. Whoever was matched up against him, whether it was Fabian Moreau, whoever was going up against him at the time, he seemed to win most of his battles, and I think the Falcons had to play zone coverage off him because he was just going to beat you in man, and that's what he brings to the offense. I think he freed up a lot for Zach Ertz. I think he freed up a lot for Dallas Goedert. I think, he really helped Jalen Reagor out tremendously. Yeah, that Smith-Reagor combination, that seems to be a decent 1-2 punch right now.
All right. Obviously, we've been asking the listeners, what's one big takeaway that before the game you wanted to find out and that after the game you now found out?
Could Nick Sirianni call a game? Well, it turns out again. There were 2 things I found out in the NFC East yesterday, and it took me about a half. Could Nick Sirianni call a game? Yes. And can Ryan Fitzpatrick play all 17 games for the Washington football team? No. So you learn a lot of week one.
Real quick, can the Giants offensive line block? No.
No. Well, we knew that. We didn't need week one to tell us that, but yeah, I digress. Oh, can Daniel Jones hold on to the football? Well, we needed the third quarter for that, so no.
Jeez. All right, NFC East, Eagles 1-0, first place. Everybody else 0-1, looking up. And obviously, there was the injury, as you mentioned, to Fitzpatrick. The Giants line looks like it's going to be a problem. And Dallas, with a loss, still looked good on Thursday night. All 3 of those teams with very interesting storylines. We'll talk more about the NFC East with Jeff on Wednesday's show. But for now, Eagles 32, Falcons 6. That's the result. Jeff Kerr, appreciate it, man.
Mike, did you wake up smiling today after that game? I have to know.
You have to. Every day, every Monday feels so much different, and especially last year was painful every Monday. I mean, even if they won the game, it was painful.
It's almost like you didn't want them to win at that point, but I was happy. I was in my element yesterday. I got to watch the Eagles, and I got to cover the Chiefs game. I was all fired up to watch Patrick Mahomes.
That was a great game.
What a game. I'll tell you what, I can't wait for tonight, too. Raiders, Ravens.
All right, we'll talk about it on Wednesday. Thanks, man.
Yep, sounds great. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
At Jeff Kerr, CBS, and, of course, right here on the Sports Bash. We'll wrap up the show. I got sounds of the game. How did it get done? You'll hear from Merrill Reese and Mike Quick coming up next right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Jeff Kerr, brought to you by the expert solar team of New Jersey, EMT Solar and Roofing and Solar Guardians. Start your solar journey today by learning more. Visit ESPNsolar.com. All right, how we wrap up the show on a Monday. Here we go. It is Merrill Reese, the best calls of the Sunday. Yeah, welcome to the NFL, Devonta Smith. He said he knew it was a touchdown right off the bat. He knew that one was going to score a touchdown when he saw the man-to-man coverage. And a perfectly placed ball there, I think, is the underrated part of the whole thing by Jalen Hurts. He put it right in the only spot that anybody could catch it, in the breadbasket. Take two. Yeah, Goddard, what a throw by Jalen Hurts, though. I mean, Goddard, if you watch the thing, it looks like Goddard isn't really open, and Hurts just throws it in there, and then boom, all of a sudden you get this perfectly placed throw. Now, it's a little low, but nobody else on the field can catch the pass. The only guy who's there to catch the pass is Goddard. That's it. All right, take number 3. Let's see what else we got here from the Eagles. A quick welcome and everybody to the NFL this week. Kenny Gainwell, yes, he scores the touchdown, but literally you could have put Deuce Staley back there and he still would have ran for a touchdown. Jordan Mailata, Isaac Seumalo, Jason Kelsey, Brandon Brooks, and Lane Johnson dominated the game up front. And on that particular play right there, they absolutely dominated and just absolutely opened up a hole for Kenny Gainwell, who actually scored a touchdown earlier in the game that got called back. But that one right there, he gets in for his first ever touchdown for the Eagles. Let's go to this touchdown, which we hope we see more of these plays. Take 4. He faked you out. He faked you out, faked you out. You know what he faked out? All the people who were counting Jalen Reagor out got faked out because Reagor showed the speed. And what a great job by Jalen Hurts to pull that thing out and get it to Reagor. You're right. He did fake everybody out. That's the sound of the day here on the Sports Bash. It's brought to you by Indeed. It helps you hire great people fast. Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest. Visit Indeed.com/credit. Indeed.com/credit. That'll do it for me. Coming up next, it's game night. Chris Franklin from NJ.com joins Josh at 6:20, and that will take you to Monday Night Football. How was my Monday Night Football guy voice? All right. Raiders and Ravens. I'm back tomorrow. Who's in, who's out tomorrow right here on the Sports Bash. Have a great rest of your Monday, everybody.